You are now listening to Renaissance Soul.
Welcome to the Renaissance Soul podcast. I am your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier, and this is a very important episode, and I'm super excited to do this episode. I'm joined with Hobey Echlin. He's the bassist of the early 90s Detroit shoegaze band Majesty Crush. Also in the band was, on drums, Odell Nails, guitar, Michael Siegel, and on vocals, David Stroughter. The reason why this episode is very important because Majesty Crush was a bit of an anomaly in the Detroit music scene, as they were compared to bands with the shoegaze sound that would typically come out of the UK, but they were oddly connected to so much that was within the city of Detroit. They were surrounded by other artists who also didn't fit any sort of creative box. With their lush, dreamy sounds, along with the colorful members of the band. Especially the vocalist, David Stroughter. That really made them memorable around the city. But it was the passionate lyrics of Stroughter that set them apart and defined them. Majesty Crush captured a vibe of Detroit while pulling from, their global influences. The story of Majesty Crush is just as relevant today, with two members of the band being black men, drummer Odell Nails and the vocalist David Stroughter. They had to endure much of the same bigotry that we're still fighting for in the current Black Lives Matter movement. And as for Stroughter, he would die during an altercation with the police in Los Angeles in January of 2017, as this is another instance where being black, having mental health issues, and how the police deal with such a situation come into discussion. With Majesty Crush, it was as if they were just too good of a band for this world. You'll hear this from my conversation with Hobey Echlin. Majesty Crush were somehow in the most interesting places at the right times, but the circumstances were not always on their side. They're definitely a band with a flame that shined too bright, especially David Stroughter. And they were special, but sometimes that means the flame burns out that much quicker. The story of Majesty Crush isn't done yet, though. Recently, Third Man Records, Jack White's label, is set to release a compilation called Southeast of Saturn, and it's going to be a collection of music from Detroit's space rock, shoegaze, dream pop scene. All those people that were kind of around each other that you'll hear in this interview. That's going to be released on November 20th of 2020, digitally and on vinyl. You can pre-save that and pre-order that already. And with the announcement of that compilation, they released Majesty Crush's number one fan, and I guess it gets a really nice, remaster for this. And when you listen into the story about that, it's amazing how that came to be. How it's kind of crazy. There's going to be this story about how number one fan got on this compilation, but it's crazy what happens in this 72-hour span. So be on to listen to that, and with that, hopefully we can get all three of the major Majesty Crush, main projects re-released in the future, maybe on vinyl and CD again. They had 2 EPs in a full-length album, but you'll hear in this episode that hopefully we can get that music out again, because before he passed, and you'll hear this in the episode, one of David Stroughter's last wishes is that he just wanted his music to be heard. And for me, someone who'd I never heard of this band for so long until somewhat recently, and then when I heard their music, heard the story, I'm like, yo, this is an incredible story. I've known Hobey Echlin from other things. He was the author of the Insane Clown Posse's Behind the Paint book, and I've seen him. I've been friends with him on social media. But when I finally went down the Majesty Crush rabbit hole, listened to everything, I was like, yo, why didn't I ever hear of this band? And I think more people do need to hear of Majesty Crush, and I do think that this is a story that needs to be told because it's it definitely is this in this weird cross section of a band who's doing music that you didn't think would. You're having these black artists doing music that wouldn't think that they were going to do, but then it does touch onto a lot of the subjects that we're talking about in the Black Lives Matter movement. Especially in regards to how the police deal with situations with people with mental health issues, and that's why a lot of people want to defund the police and move those resources to other people who can better are better equipped to handle those situations. So the story Majesty Crush and David Stroughter is definitely very, very, very relevant today. And you'll hear, like, I just let Hobey talk, man, because he can talk, and he's very passionate about this band, and I can see why, dude. If go online right now, search Majesty Crush. There's stuff on YouTube you can listen to, and when you just listen to it, you're like, man, like it's beautiful, and the lyrics are very passionate, obsessive. It's kind of crazy. You listen to the lyrics, but there's a lot in this episode, so please, please give it a listen to, and hopefully one day, more people can listen to this, get to hear more of Majesty Crush's music, on all the proper channels, and definitely, go cop that Southeast of Saturn compilation that Third Man's putting out, because it looks really cool. It's a part of Detroit's music scene that people don't really talk about. It was this part of the music scene where people were doing like other different things, and that wasn't really typical of what you think about Detroit. So like that, I think that's going to be a really cool compilation. I can't wait to hear it and see what the types of things that they selected for. So without further ado, after a short break from our sponsor, we'll get into this interview with Hobey Echlin as we talk about the history of Majesty Crush.
So it was maybe 92, 93. It's still a Waco standoff. And we're driving to South by Southwest. And we get to South by Southwest. And this is when, like, the Jetter Torturers were playing Quonset Hut Air Force Hank or Air. So South by Southwest was starting to get a little showbiz. It wasn't just, hi, I'm from Alston and on the corner, I'm going to be playing my tune.
Right.
But Jesus fucking Christ. We were like, you could count the number of black people on my band. That was like it. We were like, right. We're kind of looking around, and it was just kind of like, David spent time in jail for being a light-skinned black guy. He, our first band house was in the early 90s. It was an Indian village. He had it was called East Village. He had a townhouse his dad helped him get. The basement was the band that became Mule, and Majesty Crush formed there. And Neil Oliveira, who was the Transmat publicist, a great artist, Detroit Escalator Company, also now a music lawyer, he was living there. And it was just a really fertile, creative place. And Dave was coming home one night, and he gets picked up by the cops because he's a light-skinned black guy with a gap in his teeth. Because a lady had a robbery when she was getting out of her car, or a carjacking, and it was a light-skinned black guy. And Dave literally, just because of an anomaly of how late it was, it was like so ridiculous, like coming back from the store, he winds up spending the weekend in jail. And Tuesday practice, we're like, is he gonna be okay? Like, what the fuck? The next song he writes is "Pennies for Love." I mean, we're like, not "Fuck the Police." Okay, "Pennies for Love" it is. That was the vibe of the time. If you know ICP, Devil's Night, the exaggerations of Slim Shady, Detroit is a place, and I always say this: The Crow was a documentary. It really does feel that kind of perverse. 8 Mile, the paintball scene, is genius because it really was so empty. I mean, when I was in high school, we trip acid and go explore the Uterol plant. My high school girlfriend, Franny Stroh at Stroh Beer, she wrote this amazing book, Beer Money, and she's like, Detroit was our playground. And it's like a metaphor for how these huge industries, we were all the children of them, and okay, we're going to plant our seed here. Looks more like I'm going to trip acid and take pictures of ruins.
Right.
Yeah. So what are some of the topics or the things that you want to hear about regarding the compilation or Crush in general, the whole Renaissance soul theme, which that's what I jokingly refer to it as spanning time, but that's something I enjoy about when I research the nature of this cast is you really are paying homage to a lineage. And I like that.
Yeah. That's what I want to do.
Can't pronounce homage either. What?
Are you okay with talking about the lead singer's death and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I just read the police report about that, and it sounds like an ICP song.
If you only knew what Joe and Joey, because I had to tour with them, they were like, "What is up with Dave?" Like, they're the insane clowns, and they're like, that dude. Mike Clark can tell a Dave story like no one else. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to...
I'm happy to talk about all of that because some of it's real time and a lot of it has not been said. I want to talk about life and the things that matter. You know what I mean? Because that's why we're here now.
Yeah, but I was going to bring it up. I just wanted to make sure that, like, you're cool talking about.
No, totally. It's ongoing, man. I mean, it's something, trust me, I'm on the DL. Like, I'm a year into a newfound sobriety. And one of the biggest issues was having to confront the fact that beginning with Dave, I had like 5 people die in my life in a relatively short span of time, also including my father. So it's like, blah, blah, blah. But like the Dave thing was something at the time I was as shocked by anybody else. And now I'm really like processing it. Like, man, this music was great. Oh my God, this dude was such a genius, but so troubled. Like I was always reacting to him. I could never really love him, if that makes any sense.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, that's
yeah.
I think that's a regular thing in Detroit. Like, there's those people where you just kind of react to them and kind of try to contain your whatever around them.
No, yeah. No, I'm cool with it. I mean,
yeah, I was reading your piece that you wrote in Metro Times about him a few years ago, and there was just like a lot of cool things about the band in general in there that was definitely.
I mean, there's a really dark secret, and the darkest secret of all is that. I mean, I want to say this as sweetly as possible, but we were like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but we were kind of like when the Athens, Georgia, how old am I? When the Athens, Georgia scene hit, REM, the B-52s, blah, 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 everybody said, yeah, we're the scene, but the band that we really liked was called Pylon. And there are these bands like you may have heard like Nirvana and all those bands, but they looked up to a group called either the Melvins or it would have been like the Wipers.
Yeah, there's always those bands that came before.
They're kind of legendary before their time band that everybody. I mean, and I don't want to say Motorhead because damn, they were so successful, but. I think you know what I mean. So
yeah, there's always
Majesty Crush was a little too much, a little too soon.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say without any hesitation, we were a good decade earlier, and we had a much darker post-punk background. Dare I say, we were the only band that had a singer who could converse with Blixa Bargeld, with Einstern Neubauten, and did. Dave was raised between Europe and here in a mixed family. The song Sane is very much about his relationship with his mother, and that his mother was beautiful and German and gave up her whole life to come here and raise this kid. And there were a lot of issues with, Dave had a cousin who was killed in basically a carjacking, and that changed everything. And that's when Dave really started to believe in himself more as an artist. But I think it's when he started to do what a lot of people who are in a position to catch a lot of potentially unwanted attention because of social things. Yeah. He just got used to, I can get thrown in jail for a weekend. And that was really what propelled, I mean, we'd never admit it, but the whole thing was, it was just, I mean, this is so corny, but it's like why I think bands like Cocteau Twins and Dead Can Dance are huge in the Midwest, because you have these cold, long winters. It's like Chicago goth. Like, what? It's like, no, man, it totally makes sense. We all want to, if it's going to be a cold place, at least make it cool like London. You know what I mean? Yeah. And of course, Detroit is. But the thing was, Dave turned me on to, in college, we all lived together. He was going to Washington Community College. This is before I was in a band with him, man. He turned me on to Sid Barrett, the earliest Pink Floyd, Jaw Drop. I still have those tapes, Saucer Full of Secrets. He turned me on to A.R. Kane. And this is kind of our origin story. In the last days of Spawn Ranch, we would go to this record store called Play It Again Records. And the slightly older, cynical John Cusack high fidelity record store clerk was named Michael Siegel. Yeah. And he turned us on to a record by a group called A.R. Kane. And that record was called 69. And A.R. Kane were two black guys, Andy and Rudy. They are the A.R. in Mars. Pump up the volume, pump up the volume. Yeah, that's them. The A.R. It's Color Box, and it's all their names. A.R. and Mars is Andy and Rudy. A.R. Kane. A.R. Kane were like hearing dub Cocteau Twins. It was like hearing Marvin Gaye drowning beautifully. It was clearly influenced by dub and soul, but it was through this prism of the shinier textures and the lushness. It wasn't shackled to it. Right. The thing I cannot impart to you enough is that a lot of Dave's songs were about death, violence, obsessions, gender, identity issues. You dress me up in lingerie. I'm going to dance. I'm going to sing to you, smile. But it was always against the backdrop of, fuck. Always. I mean, Odell Nails. He was Club Connect. Do you remember MC Gavel? Did you watch that as a kid on 56?
No, I
Club
don't
Connect. It was the, hi, kids. We're here to teach you with... Odell Nails was a child show star. You can look it up. MC Gavel. Okay. MC Gavel, Odell's dad was, God rest his soul, was Odell Nails Jr. He was the first black superintendent at Pontiac Public Schools. Okay. They were one of the first black middle-class families to live in Southfield outside of, like, Smokey Robinson and Diana Ross's, like, whatevers. Odell remembers in the middle of the night, we called it the 00 Ranch, Odell and Odell. He was a cowboy from Oklahoma. That's why when I see that Proto Martyr video, the one with the black cowboy,
Yeah.
That's his dad. That was totally his dad. I'm like, send it to Odell. But anyway, dude, I was like, well, what's like going on? He goes, you get up in the middle of the night to pee and get a glass of water, and you'd walk by the living room, and my dad would be behind the couch, headlights shining the front window, and he had a shotgun. And he'd say, Odell, go back to bed.
Wow.
That's why we bought records like Cocteau Twins, Jesus and Mary Chain. And the funny thing is, you know what we logically were drawn to right out of that, like A.R. Kane, and this was a huge thing with Majesty Crush, NWA, King T, Act a Fool, EPMD. So what you're saying, our first song, Sunny Pie, to me, was the Cocteau Twins, Ice Blink Luck, married to EPMD, So What You Saying.
Okay.
I wrote the motherfucker. That's what I was thinking. Now, Dave's lyrics about being obsessed with a woman who worked at a porn theater, and when he dates her, they dress up in lingerie. That is Dave's genius. He turned that motherfucker into Prince, Marvin Gaye, Michael, I don't fucking know what. Like, we heard that and it was like, boom, boom, boom. Like, no, tell me, you have ever heard anybody from Detroit or in the world able to write lyrics like that?
Yeah,
I'm being so fucking for real right now.
That was something that you talked about in that Metro Times article, that you guys were this anomaly in the Detroit scene.
This is the point I'm getting to, Kelly. We thought of ourselves. I wanted to be contemporary with EPMD. So what you're saying is, to me, that taught me how to write music. Break parts, got that great break beat. I need your the One Nation Under a Groove break beat at the end. You know the song, right?
Yeah, yes.
So what you're saying, boom, 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 ding, 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 ding. That's Sunny Pie. Boom, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. Boom, 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 boom. Ding, 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 ding. That was Sunny Pie. Sunny Pie is EPMD, but Ice Blink Luck was the jam, remember? I'm left-handed. But the point was, from my angle, as some idiot who, this is what I've come to love about Primal Scream. If Primal Scream isn't a great band, they're even greater fans of music, and goddamn, I love it. You know what I mean? And I realized I always thought of myself as a mascot. Like, I was just a fan of these people. Michael Stiegel was playing guitar with a 3-string guitar. 2 of them were the same note. Odell had a drum set that was on the ground, and the big thing was he was sitting on a drum throne. And there wasn't that much duct tape. Not that much. I'd done a stint in rehab, but dude, we had Dumini DePorres as a guitar player. You know him, P-Funk? Yeah. Well, he was Dave and Odell's buddy. You know, that black new wave vibe. Detroit soul. You know, you've been enough techno guys. Yeah. You can't, it's so weird that the black new wave dude is still considered an anomaly. I meet lots of people out here in Long Beach, and I met way more new wave. Everybody knows hip hop, but everybody knows Depeche Mode and The Cure.
Oh, yeah.
You know, by side note, the weirdest thing in the world outside of Tex-Mex music being influenced by polka. You know that, right? It's all Eastern European. This gets better. Every Mexican grandmother out here knows every word to every Smiths and Morrissey song. The Smiths have this insane Latin underground following. Look it up. There's a band called Mexicary. It's exactly what you think it is.
That's amazing.
It's mariachi versions of, yeah. So I'm used to a world that's like, what? Yeah, cool.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't mind. You know how reggae music formed? Do you know how reggae music formed?
How?
Okay. Have you ever heard the really early proto rocksteady where like the Wailers are Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Jimmy Cliff all Motowned out, and they're trying to do Beatles covers and Motown covers, and it's like a bad talent show? The story of reggae is they were obsessed with American soul, but they could only hear it through the AM radio stations from New Orleans, and the signal was so thin. And you know, AM radio, it drops any heavy frequencies.
Oh, yeah.
So they wouldn't hear boom, cat, boom, cat. They would hear cat, cat, cat.
And a bling, bling.
Chinka, chinka, chinka. You're like, it's like in Mad Magazine where the blueprint, somebody swats a fly on it, and then the building gets built, and it has the big fly on it. You know what I mean, man? Like, it's a mistake. But that's, you know, the greatest line I ever heard was at a new music seminar. Iggy Pop said, "I want to hear radio so good it must be a mistake." And that's the whole thing. It's like, I think one thing Majesty Crush did, because I couldn't play any better. I'm going to fess up to everything. I mean, the Jimmy Dooms of the world would say, "You guys are a television ripoff. You guys are here ripoffs." And I'd be like, maybe some hot water and lemon, put a little honey in it. But I would also say, I'm not good enough to do that, but thanks. And we were like, we had a really weird Jane's Addiction story. Ziola Blue, if you know Jane's Addiction, that record, you know, 3 Lovers in 3 Ways, the cover. Ziola Blue was my college girlfriend's best friend. She's from Ann Arbor.
Okay. She
killed herself. So when I was in college, it'd be like, yeah, Ziola's, I met my girlfriend right after she killed herself. But it's like, yeah, Ziola's boyfriend sent us a new tape. Oh, what's this called? Huh, Psycom. Yeah, it's cool. And that was actually the idea behind Majesty Crush. I remember Odell said, we want to do something that's like the Jane's Addiction acoustic record. Do you remember that?
No, I didn't.
They did an EP. It has Jane Says on it. Oh, it's amazing. People don't realize this. The Jane's Addiction, before they turned into, and they did this perfectly, they made their sound heavy and big for an audience that was ready to hear rock come back. But the early stuff, Psycom and this EP, the Jane's Addiction, you can find it. It's not the Kettle Whistle EP. It's a live one. It's the one that they do Rock and Roll by Lou Reed.
Okay.
And it was all right. Remember that one?
Yeah.
I remember Odell going, we want to do a band. I'm on drums, but we want to we like this feel. It came out of Dark and Scary, but it's more like, because it's acoustic and because you can really hear the vocals, it doesn't need all the gimmickry and gadgetry. It's just simple and good, but it still has that eccentric vibe. And of course, Perry Farrell, Jesus, you know, he and Dave, kindred spirits very much. They've met a few times. You know, kind of almost childlike, but genius element of it. Totally similar. So we saw early on, like, I don't want to say Metascripture, but the other bands on this compilation, and it's such a genius compilation. I mean, it covers, wow. I mean, the big bands when we were coming up, and Wendy and Carl, obviously, like, because they were a scene unto themselves, and they were like, they were like the Calvin beat happening type shit, just gods. But that was kind of after our time, and like the Perplexes, like all those bands, like we knew of them. We played with Asha Vida, God, like just wonderful. But we were much more like song based, more bass and rhythm based. We weren't all swooshy. A lot of it was very, you could sample it. That was Odell and I. I think we just had naturally a heavier background because we were into heavier music. Not heavy, I mean like yeah, you were raised on rock and roll, but and I wouldn't say Motown, but just the natural thing was to do music that was, no matter how articulate it was driven by rhythm. And I know all those other bands were great, but with the exception of Pake, who I don't think made it on the compilation, I'm not really, or maybe they did. There's not a lot of bands of color, which isn't anything. I didn't mean it like that. But what I did mean was we would practice in those early days, and Smokey Robin or Diana Ross's nephews would come and hang out from LA.
Yeah.
Like in between some nasty shit. But that was our scene, man. These kids, like, Teddy Richards, Aretha's son, he was a bud. Yeah,
you guys were in the mix of all of that sort of.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Of that culture.
People don't know this, but Aretha Franklin's son Teddy was this total psychedelic weed head at Michigan State and a fucking genius. One of the guys from the band In Excess produced his solo record.
Yeah.
So that's the span of this. Dave, after Majesty Crush, this is in the forum era, like the forums of the early aughts. He was like talking to Jason Pierce, talking to, he did a record with one of the guys from Spiritualized, one of a guy who wound up playing bass, I think, in Spiritualized or Spaceman 3, a guy named Will Carruthers. Great artist, great author. But Dave was able to get this guy to come over and play on a record with him. So our scene was like more based on England, but the timing of it is, we jokingly called it gangster bliss and all this stuff, but it was not as shiny and scene based. Like, we did shows with the Laughing Hyenas. We did shows with Wig back when it was Mule Wig. We did shows with Mule. We were always like the light, airy, fun band. It'd be like seeing Lenny Kravitz open for the Stones or something, I remember one of the guys in Charm Farm came up and said, "I love your record. Me and my lady fuck to it all the time." That would have been amazing if I didn't hear that Slash said the exact same thing to Lenny Kravitz. But there we go. That's a true story. So we didn't consider ourselves necessarily part of that scene so much as those were the kids that came to see us, were supportive. We would play shows with them. Thirsty Forest Animals moved to Chicago. They brought us to Chicago for some of our first shows.
When I go back and listen to these records, I see that like you said before, you wanted to sort of stand next to the contemporaries. Whatever your influences were, you wanted to be like that. And when I listen to it, I'm like, okay, I feel like this record could stand next to a Stone Roses record or anything like that. In different parts of the world. It wasn't just a Detroit thing. You guys sort of were able to tap into your influences while sort of using the multicultural scene that you guys were just naturally a part of here in Detroit.
That's the best way anybody's ever said that. And I started doing this in 1980. That's exactly right. The Stone Roses, you just see, it's really funny, Kevin. I haven't thought about So What You Saying. I DJ'd every time I played. I have the 12-inch. I have like 3 different versions of it. It's one of my favorite hip hop songs of all time. I love how it's put together. I love the rapping. I love the quietness. I love the shitty singing. I love everything about it. But I've never been able to talk about it because it made sense for me to go, what if we did something with EPMD meets Cocktail Twins? And this was before Big Boy's a huge fan of Kate Bush. What the? I'm like, no shit. Jesus Christ. I think of The Weeknd as Elizabeth Frazier. Eccentric, unique, articulate, baffling, contradictory, whatever. But what you just said, Kelly, was amazing. We really did see ourselves. It's funny, a band like Big Chief, who I adored and were very, very smart. The second they came out, they made a hint of pride that because they tapped into punk rock booking agents, they toured Germany more frequently than they played, as they put it, Hamtramck, like paychecks. And I remember talking to Barry because I went to college with him. Barry from Big Chief, and of course founded the Neck Bros, total genius. Of course, the original bass player, Corey Rust, founds Touch and Go Records, home of the Laughing Hyenas, Touch and Go reissues. Jesus, fantastic. But Barry was like, we don't want to be a local band, because that's paychecks. And he was a dick, but he said like Beer on the Penguin. And you got to admit, with a name like Beer on the Penguin, I don't care if they were Susie the fucking Banshees, dude. No. And we're always the jokey Detroit bands, right? And they were great. The 3D Invisibles, blah, blah, blah. It was all schlocky the kind of question mark and the Mysterians vibe, right? The Romantics, fucking genius, but hey, you know, with the red, like, I totally got it. It was Motown. It was the show, the plan. We had that, but it was natural. Dave had these looks, man. I remember we played with the Charm Farm at Baychex. We had a huge party at Dennis and Tommy's loft afterwards. You know, that's retro rock. It's upstairs, it's Derek May and Juan and fucking KMS. Melissa Matuzak from Prism, the lady who worked the door for everything, was there. Or her apartment was there. Def Steph was there. I don't know if you remember Def Steph. He was legend. 3 Floors of Fun. Jimmy Dooms, like rap brother in chief. He was Kid Rock's road manager. That one and only tour he did with D-Nice on the Grit Sandwiches tour. But at this party, Dave was wearing a wetsuit. And his hair was in his arachnophobia fade, which was where it was getting thin, but he had these long dreads coming out the top of his shave. And he just proceeded. It was the first time the Charm Farm, they said it perfectly. It goes, you guys are like you too. You're not great musicians, but what you guys do together is very unique. And this is Charm Farm. Like, these dudes just won a Grammy a year ago for remixing Depeche Mode. I'm still in contact. And Dennis White, dear, lovely, lovely friend of mine, one of our dearest supporters, is super hyped for this record. But they had to call 911. Dave woke up on top of a dumpster in what was then the summer heat, and he was in a wetsuit, so he was hyperventilating.
Holy crap.
And that was everybody's introduction to Dave, was this amazing opening set, this wonderful after party. Who the fuck is the crazy guy in the goddamn wetsuit that says Majesty Crush Detroit on it? And the funny thing was, if you ever see Pink Floyd live in Pompeii, or you've seen the Beastie Boys did a video where you pan around and all the equipment, Pink Floyd live at Pompeii says Pink Floyd London. So all of our stuff said Majesty Crush Detroit. Okay. And Dave used that stencil on every article of clothing. He'd have a lab coat. He'd have a wetsuit. Well, anyway, that was everybody's introduction to Dave. It was, wow, new wave Marvin Gaye. Homeless guy waking up on a dumpster. So there you have it, man. If you wanted the one, you got both. See, so we were this total anomaly. But at the same time, people recognized something was cool. And believe it or not, we were able to contain a lot of the self-destruction. And to be honest, Dave got out of that little legal squabble. His parents, we bought a house, and they bought a house. And this is where the band Mule came from. This became the Mule Band House up in Hamtramck. And, you know, that's where we made the Sam's Muscles, everything else. And I guess, you know, the point I'm making is that Majesty Crush, I think, pioneered a scene by creating, and this is corny as hell, but like a safe space for people who are really into British music to be encouraged that it could be interpreted on a local level, it still sound relevant to a world audience. And that's, of course, the irony. God bless, you know, Dave Buick, Rich Hansen put this together. You know, they're going to do like a release for this over in England. And I'm like, you know, I DJ, or back when DJing was, you know, a profession. Now it's on the chimney sweep with record boxes. But the funny thing about that is a band manager hands me a Majesty Crush single. I didn't know it came out. He goes, yeah, I got it off Discogs from Brazil, $25. I'm like, what? Are you sure it's the same one? Because Spawn Ranch, there were 2 Spawn Ranches. There was an industrial version, and we were like, as Mike Rubin from Motor Booty said, we were new age music for people with black leather jackets. I will take that. But I was like, you sure? And you look it up, and it's like, holy shit. And that's the thing. You know, you always hear it, but it's like the right music finds its right story. Detroit has enough Rodriguez stories, right? Yeah. The unearthed classic. And this is shitty, but it's true. Dave was killed in an officer-involved shooting. He had a history of mental illness, and he had come to a crux in the road where he was either going to get into, he was number 69 on a waiting list to get into a halfway house, or he was going to potentially go back to jail on a kind of wrong place, wrong time gun charge, which I know is debatable. You know, somebody wakes him up. he kind of freaks out. He's had a gun charge. He's smart enough to only have a hatchet, but he's disoriented. He's off his meds. He doesn't have a fixed address. And he creates a scene. They chase him and they shoot him. And it happens right before the inauguration. There's an anonymous tip that it might have been death by cop. You've read the police report. It's publicly available. But it turns out he did leave a note. And the note was to his sister. And it was basically like, you know, anything that was wrong, obviously I'm sorry. And I'm just going to trust you with everything I ever did. You know, if you can get more of the world to hear it, that'd be good. And that was it, you know. Dave's will was a piece of paper saying get his music heard. I don't think any other band in that compilation has a history like this. And I only say it because what I'm trying to say in a really beautiful way is, it's like, can you imagine if it was like, there's a grunge compilation from Ohio? You'd be like, no. I don't care how good it is, but if you're telling me there's a shoegaze compilation from Detroit,
and just to clarify things,
and the singer of the lead band was killed in an officer-involved shooting. You have peaked. Now you have my attention. You know.
It's and just to clarify things for people listening to this,
Majesty Crush. If we were before our time, I think something that I hope we did and these other bands did for us is they showed us that you didn't have to be a local band to make music, and that you were gonna take shit, but it was totally worth it. And it's almost like I feel like the music is more relevant now than it was back then, just because now it's the weekend. You know, I play it for people who goes, oh, like the weekend, like a new wave black guy who like knows 80s music and does this stuff like, woo, I'm a girl. Yeah. I'm like, do you know what that was like in 1991 Detroit? You know what I mean? I mean, Eminem is shooting paintball guns. You know what I mean? Dress me up in women's lingerie.
And just take a break. Just to clarify for people listening, Third Man Records, you know, Jack White's labels, you know, going to be putting out this collection of music called Southeast of Saturn, and it's a collection of music from Detroit's like space rock, shoegaze, dream pop, like from the '90s. The first, song that they shared was Number One Fan from Majesty Crush when they announced this, and it's coming out in November of 2020, and you've mentioned it before, you know, already so many times how like unique this sort of this compilation is. Number One Fan was like you said, you know, it got radio play. It was sort of like, you know, that one song. Was it like that one song that people were like, if they came to a Majesty Crush show, that they were excited to hear, or was it just like
they knew it? You know, the thing was, I didn't know it at the time. I'm not joking here, man. So at the time, I lived at 1 John Ark, 1500 Woodward, right? And in the basement, it used to be a jewelry store. It was the Right K jewelry store, right? Something like that. So the basement had a huge diamond vault, right? So we practiced in the diamond vault, because what's going to be, just don't close the door, but what's going to be more soundproof than a motherfucking diamond vault? So we're in there, blah, 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 blah. And I have this bass line. I had learned Ain't No Mountain High Enough. I'm not that good. Yeah, if this was a bass, only half those notes would have transpired. But the beautiful thing was that, so I'm working on this ding, 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 dun, 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 minor, dun, dun, major, 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 dun, 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 dun. And it's kind of like, you know, it's almost like each part was narrative, like something good is happening, but I'm crippled with self-doubt, but I'm gonna resolve this now, and I'm gonna get it all out. That is why I don't write lyrics and sing. But it was just something. And I remember Odell had actually left to go to a rave. Odell became an item of contention, but I did get in better shape hauling his drums. he'd sometimes leave practice right when it was over because he had something else he was going to go to. Well, at the time, a very dear friend of ours was Joe LaFata. He was a late grade drummer, and he was half of a group from Detroit called The Final Cut. It was actually Jeff Mills' original band with Azrock, Tony Schrock, that by the early 90s, they had a deal with network records like Skinny Puppy, Sarah McLachlan, The Final Cut.
Yeah.
And he was a drummer, and he was like a Zeppelin drummer. Like, he auditioned for The Cult. He was a rock drummer. But he heard something. He recruited me for Final Cut. And he was like, the singer can sing, but he's got charisma. And it's just, he was a big picture guy. He was a producer. He produced commercials. So he actually picked this beat, which is funny because now I think of it as a total Odell beat. Odell was drumming in a swingingly stiff fashion that I think anybody from Detroit who knows the Odell beat knows what I'm talking about. You got used to funk being how you could gently push out that 1 and 4. How could you fuck with it? How could you twist it?
Right.
You know, you may have heard this story, the Willis Show Bar. It's Aunt Fiddler's birthday party. Moody Man is the DJ. It's midnight. What do we drop? It's a man who taught Dilla the MPC. It's Moody Man over there. It's Pylon the Funkadelic keyboard player. What the fuck? Have you all seen, Ghostbusters? Remember, that evil spirit's gonna be what all you're manifesting in your subconscious. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Get the fuck out of here. It was like that, man. We're in a diamond vault. Downtown Detroit, ain't no mountain high, but it was descending. And you hear in my head, it kind of had a, kind of wistful. If it was a girl, it would cut its own bangs and probably have a Hello Kitty lunchbox for a purse. Just the way I was thinking. But, and Michael, and then I had those big chords for the break. Because I love that kind of Rachmaninoff and shit. It's more like Tchaikovsky. But the thing is that, just really articulate chords. But Dave's lyrics, sent you a letter today. Fake names couldn't get in my way. Kind of love that never strays. I'd kill the president for your love. And we were like, and it was, of course, John Hinckley and his obsession with Jodie Foster. We would wind up writing a song. There was a band, Jodie Foster's Army. We wrote a song called If JFA Were Still Together, which was like, God, I wish we still had the scene and the anger and it wasn't just a bad memory, which is an amazing song for us to write. We actually got a call from JFA. Oh, we're still together. Yeah, Daft Punk. Fact check. Daft Punk isn't playing at my house. What? I was gonna bring crackers.
Oh.
No, but my point was, I don't think I knew how good it was. And you know what's funny? Because I'm super corny, hence the hat. But what do you call it? When we found out the song was going to be re-released, I asked a lot of musician friends of mine. I'd been in contact with since after Dave, and I'm talking really broad, like Christine Young, the New York-based, Kansas City-based, total avant-garde, Diamanda Galas, Laurie Anderson, Bjork times 10, massive Majesty Crush fan. Who knew? But I said, hey, would you guys maybe cover Number One Fan? No two people, not everybody did it, but the people who did, not everybody got the chords the same or right. Some of them got better than I did. But the vocal cadence that Dave was capable of was almost like a rapper. He could sing offbeat or on beat. Number One Fan's a great example. He even did this one thing. I've read everything that you wrote, seen everything that you saw. heard every song that and he goes, played on. He wanted to give it a Southern accent, a twang, you know, like almost like how much Southern fucking hip hop have you heard where they throw in that weird little, you know, and it becomes a thing. Dave was like, played on. And if you hear it, you're like, why does he go to the hick voice? Dave was dialing it in like a jazz drummer with 30-second notes, but it was totally natural. And that was the thing about that song was it was a really, really good pop song. But if you listen to the lyrics, the fuck is this, man? I mean, I don't know how to put it. When the Beatles were writing songs like Piggies, or maybe it's like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and I'm totally not comparing it to the Beatles, but I'm saying the sound of the song and the subject matter are kind of like, what? Did he say, I killed the president for your love? For your love. You know, you're like, shabbat, shabbat. You know, like, fuck. But that was what was so cool was, you know, we innocently put it on a record. We innocently gave it to Darren Ravel, to our friends at DET, Ralph Valdez. We gave it to, you know, Gannett, all those Kelly Brown, D-Man over at 89X. Everybody, Vince, everybody had the record, and they started playing it. And it was like, and, you know, we could go play in Toledo, and kids had heard it from a college radio station, and we tour, and you could be playing, you know, we'd play like in Iowa or Kansas City, and there were like the 8 kids who heard it on the college radio. And it was like, I guess this is what I became really aware of, was the power of a single to launch a scene. You know, sometimes that's dubious, like Ice Ice Baby creating a bigger market for rap. But sometimes it's actually what's necessary. And we came out of such a different thing, but we presented a product, which was a band capable of a radio hit with completely original subject matter and a sound that shouldn't have made sense. And that's why I think all these kids that went to the record store where Michael worked, you know, the kids, the Glider, the Windy Park, like they did their own story. They became their own world. But they all kind of saw like, you know, it's indistinguishable. My friend at this coffee house can be playing a show that's just as relevant to me as seeing that one Cocteau Twins tour that came to what was then the State Theater. Yeah. You know how empowering that is? It's like Bootsy. You know why Bootsy wears the star mirror glasses? So when he looks at kids, they see themselves as stars. That shit makes me cry. Oh, man. But that was the whole thing was, you know, it's almost like we had to lay on the barbed wire a little bit so everybody could come over. And I'm not to say we're martyrs, and I do not make Dave a martyr at all. He had a severe mental illness. And if anything, his death serves more than anything, for me personally, the need for more comprehensive policing, non-lethal force, just saying. And lastly, some compassion and understanding. Yeah. There's a lot about Dave that was contradictory and wasn't sunny pie at the end. And I think that had a lot to do with an untreated mental illness. And, you know, you've heard it up before with musicians, whether it's Scott Weiland or it's Sid Barrett, but you know, it's that great Blade Runner quote. It's based on, I believe, a Chinese proverb that, you know, it's the star that burns twice as bright, burns half as long. It's corny as shit, but goddamn it, I come to it every time because there's so many things now. If Dave was still around, I would want to. I'm so much better at music now, what it takes to make a song. Before then, it was just, I came up with this. I had no idea what time signature it was, whatever. It was like, here's this thing. And these other guys who had very different musical abilities that we all came together were able to fall in. And if there's one thing I can just say is it's like, you know, I said, Iggy Pop once said, I want to hear radio so good it's a mistake. A lot of Majesty Crush music was nobody ever, I want to write a song about. It was the exact opposite. We would jam for hours. Dave would record everything and he would just go to start write lyrics about it or something. And it was always about what was in front of him. Boyfriend was about, you know, him falling in love with a girl that had a boyfriend. You know, I'll pluck him by the gills. It's from freaking, I believe it's it's from an erotic writer, but it basically means to pick somebody up by that lady private. Like that was Dave, capable of like erotic French literature in one breath, and then I'm gonna kick, I'm gonna jig, I'm gonna think that you smile, you know. Suddenly he's freaking, you know, what's that Johnny Depp movie where he's all like whatever, but it's that kind of silly shit. That's what I'm saying, man. The dude was there and the music was there. And I know this is getting long-winded, but this is what I'm trying to say. I love all the bands on this record. We played with all of them, except maybe Wendy and Carl, I want to get, like, they could have their own world. You could give them their own series because those people, their record store was what Play It Again Records was to us in our scene. We done in-stores that Played Again. All the bands like Thirsty Forest Animals, they were our little brothers. And it was fun, man. It was really, really fun. It was just, we realize now it might have been a little important and even better, you know, hey, if you like it. I mean, who knew Michael Imperioli is this huge, like, My Bloody Valentine shoegaze fan? One of my best friends, the guy in New York that we used to stay with when we went there, my best friend, Don LaFont, is like buddies with him. I'm like, dude, you know, there you go, you know. But that's what I'm saying. It's like you coming to it. It's like, you know, you're busy seeing Kid Rock. I see Pete Cracker. Just like, my God, there's a scene out here. And my God, they have national record deals. You recognize my Majesty Crush was 10 years earlier, a version of that for the K-Fresh of maybe you picked up a guitar and you like The Cure, Depeche Mode. You were liking Oasis. What do I do with that? I'm in a town where Sponge is the big band. And I fucking love Sponge, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call Sponge a Detroit band. I think they could have been from anywhere. That's why they became so huge. But that was what was funny about Majesty Crush, especially song Number One Fan. It was very Dave. For me, it was very Detroit. Like, you know, there's that great riff in Jean Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast, and he did make one. It's fucking dope. But he says, contradictions are the fabric of our existence. And I'm like, Dave had a whole wardrobe made out of that shit. And so did all of us, man. Our look was like, this is how funny it was. I love the way Boss Hogg looked, or like Royal Trucks. We love that whole like biker boots with like vintage tracksuits look. That kind of like heroin jock look. Oh my God. And it was just like, what the I remember going to like Columbus and I'm wearing my dad's vintage Wilson like tennis outfit with the big white plastic zippers that they had back then. I'm wearing biker boots. My hair is down to here. I have a goatee, and I think I'm wearing, I don't know, like a shirt that you wouldn't expect with Wilson. You know, I'm wearing like remember everybody wore those jackets that were like race cars, like with a Cobra, you know, with the stripe and the ring. Yeah. So like the whole look was like, what the? Are you gonna play basketball or drive a car, hippie? Like, what?
What are you here for?
Dave would do gigs in goalie outfits. Now, do you remember when the goalie, they got the Mickey Mouse gloves and shit? Dave would show up at a gig full goalie, the pads, the gloves, everything.
Oh, that's great.
Do you see where I get it, Kelly? Do you see where I get it?
Right. So I want to talk about something. The first EP's Fan.
Yeah.
You know, this comes out, you know, it's 1992, you know, Vulva Records, 5 songs. You know, what was sort of the idea going into this in regards to, you know, what was there an idea about making an EP? You know, what did you guys want to do?
Yes. Well, the first thing we decided was and we now know this, right, with SoundCloud rappers, if a tree falls in the forest, I don't care unless it's on SoundCloud or I can find it on Spotify or there's a way to hear it. Back then, believe it or not, people still made 45 records.
Yeah.
And the idea was we just wanted to put out product, you know. I learned that from ICP. ICP, you know, would always put out EPs. And I remember Joe said this. Yeah. He said, it's really easy to put out an EP. you basically need 2 or 3 good songs and a couple, what I would now say are like B-sides, but EPs are like God. Like some of my favorite My Bloody Valentine records are the EPs with a weird little song in the end.
Yes.
So what happened was basically, Kelly, we had these 5 fucking songs. And it was like, wait a minute. Sunny Pie was the 45. And that was the one about, that was the EPMD Cocktail Twins Ice Blink Lonk with Dave going into this obsessive Prince mode. EPMD, So What You Saying, meets, I don't know, Marvin and Prince at the Sassy Cat on Woodward. That's the old porn theater. I heard. But then it was like, well, what else do we have? And it was like, is Pennies to Love on there? What's on Fan?
It's number 1 Fan, Penny for Love, Sunny Pie, Horse, and Worry.
Oh, word. Thank you. And I got to play the biggest dickhead rock stuff. Remind me of my songs, young man. I've been too busy hitting the road. It's the exact opposite, man. I haven't seen that record in a minute, but this is, and you just inspired me. So we had number 1 Fan was the new jam. Pennies for Love was, again, it was right after Smells Like Teen Spirit came out, and I loved how what that did was go, I love the way it took really solid chords. Jang, 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 jang. It made the chords the rhythm without it being the who. And so what I did, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but I kind of wanted to come up with a really super monochromatic, like poppy version of it. Like, what if Smells Like Teen Spirit was done on that Jane's Addiction acoustic record? What would be something which people are saying, why would you ever do that? You know what I mean? I totally understand. But the thing was, I thought it was a very simple, steady thing that these guys could really add to. And of course, Michael comes out with this big Airstream thing. And Odell has this genius idea for this. It's almost like Elvis Costello watching The Detective. I never thought it would have that beat. Fucking genius. And Dave's lyrics. Saving all my pennies. You know, I'm selling myself for a penny. It's about you're a prostitute to be with the one you love. Mother, that is just, who comes up with that? How did they come up with it? Send that to The Weeknd. I want to feel his jaw drop. It's just like, what? And then Horse, or Sunny Pie was from the record, the 45, and that was You Know Story. And then Horse was all about heroin addiction. We'd all been through a little something. Dave called it getting stuck. And we had a friend who was going through it. And I guess it was a little bit like Jane's Addiction, 3 Days. It was one of these longer songs. But like I just wrote this, which, you know, is my typical style. I basically, you know, I'm like Keith Richards on bass. I come up with a different version of the same riff, almost like a guitar, like the band Morphe used to do. Or Joy Division, New Order, of course, Gods. They made a bad record. I wouldn't know. But, you know, I come up with this thing. And Dave comes up with this whole thing. He just love if you got in his carriage. It's all about an overdose and being taken by death. And it has actually like a heroin rush in it, which I know sounds corny as shit. Did I mention it's pop music? It's a pop song about dying of a heroin overdose because death comes.
Yeah.
And then Worry. Hey, kids, do you hear what I'm saying? Do you hear what I'm saying? Those, if you didn't speak English and you heard that record, you would be like, shiny pop music, America.
But there was a lot of songs, you know, that you were seeing on MTV and stuff, rock music, Guns N' Roses and stuff. Like the actual meaning behind that shit was like, oh, we're talking about heroin, or we're talking about some crazy shit.
But you weren't always hearing the Hamtramck bands do it.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying, Kelly?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? To me, music to be relevant has to be difficult, and the music is what makes the emotion digestible.
Right.
It's about something awful. Like we love Nick Cave. Like when I first came to town, Dave would go into these, dude, like Cave was one of his, like we were all like this. We loved it.
But see, you guys weren't scared to
came to town.
You guys weren't scared to go that route, you know, when
I don't know if we know we were doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Like
At
you
the
guys were
time,
oblivious to it, you know.
Heroin addict, and I didn't realize we were writing a song about heroin.
Because
you know
your peers and
it felt natural, man.
Yeah, because your peers and Hamtramck would.
You've heard some of the hip hop now. It is just like, I mean, when I heard Danny Brown, I was like, of course. Come over, give me a hug. Dude, I remember Byron, Guilty.
Yeah.
I interviewed Guilty for that record he did with Madlib, and we just chopped it the fuck up. He did the whole thing on his thumb, on his memo.
Yeah.
I mean, he was funny, but he's just like, basically what I'm saying. Like, you are fucked from the second you wake up, you know? Just deal. And that's where, Motown obviously was to create this dignified, accessible, enjoyable, choreographed, upbeat, happy music that presented African-American culture, value, style, art, but also feeling, emotion, and politics. And it was able to do the two, shabop, shabop, but it could be ball of confusion, right?
Yeah.
We knew TT Boy. Not TT Boy, that's a porn star. We knew T-Boy. Jesus. We knew T-Boy. T-Boy was Diana's brother, I think. Or it was Diana's brother, but he wrote I Want You for Marvin. Dave knew him. You know? And that was who we envied. We envied, because I don't think I Want You is one of Marvin's, how do I put it? It's not a nailed it song. It's really, I want you to want me too. And it doesn't really resolve. It's not a song like, I want you, and I got you, and I'm here with you right now. It's more like, I want you, and I want you to want me. It's sad.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't know this at the time, but it's the same key. It's the same everything as Number One Fan. It's even, I haven't done this, but I'm going to tell you, I bet if I could figure out the chords to it, it's probably similar. But that's what I'm trying to say, is it's like we were as influenced. Dave was definitely more influenced by Motown and just what he loved. He loved really good music. Pink Floyd, loved Sid Barrett.
But I think what you guys maybe unknowingly did was you guys were influenced by the whole thing, where a lot of your peers might have been just influenced by the aesthetic.
Yeah. It's that great line, by Guns N' Roses. You have your whole career to make your first record. You have your whole background. Then you have 9 months to make your second. I think Majesty Crush took a part of Detroit and served as a pivot from the 80s to the 90s as far as what Detroit was, how we were going to turn this into something that was going to be a rebirth or something beautiful. It wasn't just going to be White Boy Rick stories, you know?
Yeah.
And the horror stories that there were so many of. And I think where this gets important, especially with Majesty Crush, was it was pop music, but it was this deep, it was coming from this like kind of horrible place where everything good seemed to be an exception to the rule. I'll remind you, this was an era where, and I don't say this to be an asshole, I say it to show you how Detroit was definitely quality over quantity. You know, everybody from Detroit that was doing anything culturally would be at the Union Street Bar on Friday nights, or at Finney's, or at the Majestic across the street. We called it the Drunken Triangle. That was it, dude. That was it. That was like, you know, we were focused. We knew like Propeller Group, all those artists, that design group downtown. Camilo Pardo with his the Banco building. Those were our contemporaries. You know, we didn't pal around with music. I palled around with Dennis from Charm Farm because we were from the same hometown. But it wasn't like I was, you know, the last thing I wanted to do was go to a guitar shop with a motherfucker. You know? In fact, day of gigs, Dennis White and I would play backgammon. He got me really, really good at backgammon. You know? But you know the movie Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah.
You know the scene in Detroit where there's the riot? I was there. I got the shit kicked out of me. I was wearing, check this out, I had hair down to here, and I was wearing a bootleg Keith Haring Free South Africa shirt with, like, you know, my typical rock and roll look. And you know how Joe Louis has the upper bowl and the lower bowl, and there's that big walkway around the middle. I'm walking with my girl, who is just fat-assed enough to get the wrong kind of attention, and she's wearing biker shorts. And these dudes just, luckily I'm drunk, they are just hauling off and hitting me full stop.
Wow.
I mean, I'm walking along, Kelly, and I swear to God, just bam. And I mean, that's how I knew I could take a punch, because I was like, I have two choices here. No, I don't. I have one choice. I'm going to walk. And I must have been, I mean, I didn't have my jaw broken, but I got punched several times. You know what I mean? But I was there. I was there when the riot broke out. Odell and I went to go see that Public Enemy show at the Windsor Ice Arena, where they covered the ice. And it was like totally, there was very little like background dat. It was all like live. It was insane.
Right.
You know, that's what we did. Those were group outings. You know what I mean, man? We'd go to see James Addiction at the Toledo Arena. You know, we weren't like, I don't know how to put it, man. I didn't hang out with people to talk, to learn songs and play music. It was the opposite of that. It was, we experienced life, and the music was kind of like the way we discuss things in the evening over a fire. You know what I mean?
Okay, on this on the fan EP, talk about the cover artwork for this, because they would share us the same photo that would be on the Per 7-inch that would include Per and Grow,
well,
that would be on the album.
By the name of Julia Cole, and it was taken by our guitar player's girlfriend, Carrie Kelly, who's a wonderful photographer. As you see, it's kind of like this happy woman that you don't know what's going on. Is she in a state of ecstasy? It's kind of blurry, and she appears to be in kind of an old, sort of Sleepy Hollow kind of setting. That's very Crush. One of my favorite images of Detroit, and you've seen this too, is when you see those gorgeously bombed out buildings and just all the natural greenery that grows around it.
Yeah. So
you get this kind of like ghetto jungle element. You know what I'm talking about. It's like you're going on the street, you're like, man, that's really beautiful. It also used to be a thriving neighborhood. Now it is just for worms. But that's what's so funny is it's like Carrie took that picture, and we caught a lot of shit for it because Julia really didn't like it, and she was whatever. But, you know, it's weird. Again, very naturally, the art of the time very much matched very naturally what we're doing. The thing I cannot impart to you more is how affected we must have looked and sounded, but how totally natural it was.
Yeah.
As natural it is for me to wear this big stupid hat right now. I mean, I swear to God, there was something that said, no, I'm going to dress up like a goalie and write songs about you dressing me in lingerie. Let's go. Let's go.
Inside the insert, you have a thing called Song for Julia, and there's lyrics, and then it says, "My butterflies don't go away." What's the story behind that, putting that in there?
Number one fan.
Yeah, okay.
My butterflies don't go away. It means I'm always obsessed with you. I'm always obsessed with you. You give me butterflies. It's a bad infatuation. In other words, it's a little bit like saying, you give me pain, anxiety, but it's so wistful. That's Dave, man. If you want to know, like, I got butterflies before this. Butterflies. Now we call it panic attack. I'm not in my system. I'm in a panic attack. Why don't we go back to calling it butterflies? Little fluffies. Come on.
I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between butterflies and having a panic attack. There's like.
But you follow what I'm saying? Butterflies mean you're excited and a little nervous to meet. Oh my God, I'm gonna meet.
And you can literally feel like there's butterflies going in your stomach.
Right,
like,
but brother, do you follow what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
My butterflies don't go away. It's a really nice way of saying, I'm still obsessed with you, and this time I'm gonna kill the president. Fake names never got in my way. I got to your room. It's a stalker, motherfucker.
So let's talk about the album now. Love 15. This would come out on Dolly Records, which would be a division of the Chameleon Music Group, and it was distributed in the U.S. by Elektra and in the U.K. by Rough Trade. So, what was, sort of the the story of, you know, going from this EP to making this album and having this distribution everywhere.
Well, the beautiful thing was the right place, right time, with the right people. We were in a cover story in Alternative Press magazine about, I remember it was us and Velocity Girl was the only other band I remember. But it was like, hey, man, there's these, Unrest may have been one of them, but it was like, hey, there are these American bands that are competing like on basically a national and international level, to the point where they're part of the Alternative Press magazine. You know, the Alternative Press is genius. It's Midwestern based, but it espoused like, you know, underground-ish music, but it embraced, like, I wrote about ICP for them. I wrote about Kid Rock for them. Yeah. And I was written about by them. So it kind of tells you where it was. But you know, A&R guys were looking around. There's this guy named Mark Garner from New York, and he came out to see us. He signed one other band called the Smashing Orange. And that was sadly right around when Smashing Pumpkins came out, so you know where that went. But he just saw something in us that was like, if I don't buy them, somebody else will. It wasn't a huge deal, but it was a window. You know, it was also like, if you're going to do a national music deal, get a national music business lawyer. Do not let the label advise you it's a conflict of interest. These are things we learned out the wrong way. We wound up getting Ministry's lawyer, but then we found out it was Ministry's ex-lawyer, and we found out why. But anyway, for what we need to do with the deal, it was fine. The thing is we got a modest deal with a modest publishing. I'll never forget, we signed to Trinity Publishing, which was run by the bass player of Supertramp. And I remember going to an Olive Garden with our A&R guy and Doogie from Supertramp to talk about how publishing would work, how they'd give us money, but then they'd have the rights. And we still, as Odell, who's now a music lawyer, who's our drummer, but he's also a music lawyer, he did the deal for the re-release of Fight the Power, for Christ's sake. As he's pointed out, we still owe 50% royalties to Warner Music. But the thing is that's the world we're in. I'm living in a place where my phone's barely on, and I'm going out to an Olive Garden with a bass player from Supertramp. And then I remember our friend Shelby Mead was, she's a huge publicist. She was working for Elektra. And she met Search on the way in for a little radio thing that was at the Renton for like whatever the hip hop label was. And this was when Third Base was breaking up. That's why they were traveling separately. So they hung out. And Dave and I go and we hang out with Search, you know, and he's doing this radio show. And afterwards we go to Garden Bowl to go bowling. And I remember Search was wearing that KMD Black Bastards t-shirt. And like the brothers were coming up like, no, man, no. And they didn't know who Search was. They saw me, but then they saw Dave, eccentric black guy. And then they saw Sheldon, normal looking white girl. But I remember we're bowling. It was, dude, when you're bowling with Third Base, there's not a lot else going on in town, right? You're kind of gauging what the level. We're not talking after hours parties. We're not talking strip parties. Dave, Search is a serious bowler. We're fucking around at Search. Flip, flip. Search is telling us they have a bigger fan base than the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Dave and I are like, we're learning a lot about how major labels work. Shelby's like nodding on too. This is a lesson. The last round of bowling, Dave beats the shit out of Search. Man, got to give it up. You get Most Improved Award, my man. Shelby, can you take me back to the hotel? Not another word. We drop him off. He kisses Shelby, shakes our hands. She turns to us as we drive away and goes, gentlemen, a star is always a star. They don't like to lose. And that was a huge lesson. It was like, we were like, oh, we're hanging out with MC Search. No, we're not. We're hanging out with a competitor in the music business.
Right.
And we're hanging out with a guy that wanted his ego stroke because his band was breaking up. So I became very aware that there's always a bigger story. And Dave and I had a funny story to tell about hanging out with MC Search. Dave used to say the dude didn't know what to make of Dave. But Dave and I found ourselves in those situations. So we do Love 15, right? We do it with the Nero Brothers at the White Room. And then we do half of it up at the Temper Mill. And we have this big record deal which at the time was big. And frankly, it was growing pains because we recorded the White Room in a very different way. In the morning with what's called a click track. It's where you have headphones that are constantly reminding you you're not playing in time if you're not used to it. And it was tough. It was tough because they were forcing us to play better and to make the songs tighter than the blurry lo-fi things. And we actually wound up redoing half the record at White Room. But here's where the major label shit happened. And this is a great story. So we do all these songs, man, and you see the record, it's everything. We actually wound up redoing Number One Fan, but secret, we wind up using the lyrics from the original version of it. But this was funny. So the label has enough money. We master our record at Smart Studios with Butch Vig's drum tech, Mr. Colson. The guy who did all the drum teching on Pumpkins records and a lot of Butch Vig stuff. Butch Vig, for people who don't know, of course, the producer of Nirvana, Bush, and most famously his own band Garbage. But
and my favorite House of Pain remix.
Yeah. Oh, and his story is it was just a fuck around. Yeah. Oh, it's the best. Shenanigans and Shamrocks.
Shamrocks and Shenanigans. Yeah.
Is it Judgment Night?
No.
Judgment Night soundtrack.
No. That was that they had the Judgment Night soundtrack. They had a song with Helmet.
Right.
That
what
was
I'm saying is Butch Vig basically. You know, the Judgment Night soundtrack gets cited as starting rap rock, and I'm like, no, Butch Vig did that.
Yeah.
This Mudhoney motherfucker. So anyway, we go up to Smart Studios in Madison, Wisconsin. It's springtime. We get put up in this gorgeous hotel. We eat Ethiopian food. We're with Mr. Colson and his lovely wife, and we master. Now, if you want to know what mastering is, it's where you, as a musician, you get paid a lot of money to not do anything. You go to the studio, you sit in the back, and he gets... Basically, think of it as you're the chef, and now the waiter and the guy who owns the restaurant and heads the kitchen is going to show you how to serve it the best. What temperature, how to lay it on the plate, what courses. You cook the big pots. Now we're going to show you how the consumer will get the most flavor at the table. So obviously, it's not very active on our part. In fact, I'm freelancing for the Metro Times the whole time. Dave and I get along really well, though.
You guys were present for the mastering?
Yeah, that's how much money there was. So check it.
I assume bands wouldn't be
no.
present
So
for
so I think part of it was so we'd understand it because it was an issue that we recorded the record in two huge parts. So their sounds could be perceived as different enough that it'd be worth it. And this guy was good. He was really good. So Doug Olson got a kick out of Dave, man. Got a big kick out of Dave. Dave would get drunk and he'd be like, his wife was Mexican and he would like do a Smells Like Teen Spirit thing like, Mr. Colson, senorita, with a gringo, like he would do these things like spontaneously and people were on the floor. So one morning it's 9 a.m. We're hearing the kick drum for the 10th time. And it's 8:30 in the morning at Smart Studios, the studio where Nirvana, like every band ever came through, all the Laughing Hyenas records, you know what I'm talking about. The door opens and a guy comes in and he's got his luggage. It's all frantic, he's got a goatee. He goes, hey, Doug. Oh, hey, Butch. Turn around. Guys, this is Butch. Oh, hey, stand up. This is my place. Oh, hey, cool. Hey, yeah. And he goes, Butch, these guys are Majesty Crush. They're from Detroit. They're friends with the Hyenas. And I'm mastering. Oh, cool. It's 8:30 in the morning, remember. He just got off a plane. He goes, hey, guys, I know. You could tell he didn't hear a word we said. He's like, I got this dad tape. Band I just worked with in LA. You mind if we can? It's your time, man. But can I hear it on my big speakers? It's been bugging me on the plane the whole time. So we go, yeah. I mean, I guess. And he goes, it's the new Pumpkins record. We're like, how do you like your eggs, Butch? So he put Siamese Dream on. Is that it? Yeah. But we don't know it then. It's like a year. It's like 8 months before it comes out or whatever. And it's Butch Vig's personal dat from the sessions he's just completed out in LA with the Pumpkins.
Wow.
And we're sitting there eating breakfast, and we hear Disarm, used to be a little boy, and I'm like, wow. Because we knew we'd play Chicago. We played with their bass player's husband's band was called Catherine. Majesty Crush would play with Catherine a lot, and Darcy and Billy, and they'd all be there. And James dated a girl from Grosse Pointe that I knew. So, we didn't know them, but we knew them.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, like, Butch is starting to do stage whispers of like, ooh. And Dave and I are looking at each other, and Doug is just kind of like, this is the way he gets. And he suddenly pauses and he turns to us and he goes, is that hi-hat too loud? Is that hi-hat too loud? And we're like, it sounds great to me, Butch. Keeps playing it. Couple songs. He's visibly getting frustrated. And Dave and I are looking at each other like, and finally goes, man, I should just go back to LA and fix this. This is bugging the shit. And we're like, no. Dave and I look at each other like, no, Butch, it's really good, man. We're huge fans. This is great. This is really good. And he's like, you think so? You think so? And Dave and I are like, later in the hotel, we're like, did we just talk Butch Vig off the ledge for remixing what would become Siamese Dream? And that was the kind of shit I would get into with Dave. When it was Dave and I together in a situation like in Houston, Texas, and we're staying, with a bunch of rednecks, but we got to get an oil change. Like Dave would take the van fearlessly into town to get all that done, like in the soccer gear. Dave was just so great, and that's what was so nuts. Is Love 15 was the record we always wanted to make. It had everything going for it. Personally, I found the taste in artwork to be in that era of being kind of purposely opaque, but that was Michael. Michael was very soft-spoken, self-deprecating, and I appreciated and loved that part of his personality came out. And if you don't know, Michael Siegel, single most important member of Majesty Crush, influences us is the Played Again, a Neptune record. Our guitar player obviously co-wrote our best songs. I wrote our poppy shit. I was like the cheesy Paul. He was definitely, Dave was George, and Odell was way bigger than Ringo, but Michael was definitely more the John Lennon in that. As much as it, I don't want to admit that, my ego, he really was. All his songs were like Solace, like what? So
yeah, Michael
amazing.
Siegel would go on to, do some amazing work with Ghostly International.
Yeah, he was like, dude, the first Ghostly single, Matthew Deere and Dasha, which was Dave Shaman, another friend named Dave who died. Disco D, of course, he did the first record cover. So, how great it is to talk to Sam and be able to talk about Disco D and Matthew Deere and then Dave and Michael. It's just like Ghostly International. You want to know where my heart, Ghostly is just, if you want to know what after the Detroit space rock thing, I think the Ghostly Paxa House scene showed you how the international, everything but space rock music of electronic dance music, European dance, Stone Roses, everything you said hit super, super, super heavy. But Michael influenced us. And Love 15 was just this beautiful record, and we got to tour, and we were excited, and then the record company went out of business. And we were in New York to do some gigs, and I'll never forget, this is how I knew it was doomed. It was the night of Nirvana Unplugged, and we were opening up for the Moist Boys. Now, if you don't know who the Moist Boys are, it was at Brownies in New York. The Moist Boys are Ween as a really annoying side project. It was an inside joke for all those assholes that were all like New York cool. Like, let's get like a weird emo band, a huge record deal, which was great. You had your jaw boxes and your quicksands and whatever. But as we all know, a lot of times it failed, CAD, all that stuff. The second we got off stage, Shelby Mead, who was working for Elektra, our label had gone out of business. We were actually counting on her to help get us in with Elektra. I should say that when the record came out on Dolly Chameleon, check out our label mates. Lucinda Williams. Yeah, that Lucinda Williams. the band that would become Queens of the Stone Age, Caius.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Those were our bandmates. Those were our label mates. I remember going to see I Knew White Zombie from way back in the day. But their first record, I was like, yeah, of course they're amazing. I've known these guys for years. I used to always catch shit, like with Spawn Ranch and with whatever, because I was always into like Bad Brains. Bad Brains' favorite band of all time.
Right.
And I always loved the hitting shit, you know? I always loved Zeppelin, you know? I'm a Grosse Pointe boy. Grew up playing football. I love hitting, you know, boom, 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 very physical. I love the physicality of a lot of that music. But obviously it made me a total anomaly in any of those bands. But the thing I was trying to say is the record comes out, we have everything going for us, and the label goes out of business. We literally are going up to their offices and putting boxes of promo material in our van. And I'll never forget, as a consolation, they're like, well, you know, Lucinda's playing at the Beacon Theater tonight if you guys want to go. And we're like, yeah, okay. You know, we're technically still on our label. And we go, and I'll never forget, it's Dave and I going to see Lucinda Williams, who at the time was a very huge country artist on the come up. Tom Jurek, actually, from the Metro Times, my mentor at the Metro Times, was actually like, I want to say he was your biographer at one point. Like, I was in the museum. I know she was. She was on Rough Trade too, by the way. So I go to piss, and it's one of those old theaters that has like the public school toilet urinals, no walls, and they're very narrow, you know?
Yeah.
It's like an old music hall. And I'm standing to pee, and this guy comes up, and he's got black boots, black jeans, a big leather vest on. He's got these big mutton chops down to here, and he's got, you know, a bolo on. And he whips it out, starting to pee, and I'm totally pee shy. He's just letting it rip, and big ass sideburns, and I'm like, okay, Staten Island cow, rhinestone cowboy bullshit. I go back to my seat. Lucinda does her whole show. And, you know, she's got the softest little voice. And she goes, and now for an encore, I'd like to bring out my very special friend, David Byrne from the Talking Heads. Motherfucker. Who comes out with a big old Nashville guitar? Mutton chops, pea shot. The dude from the bathroom was motherfucking David Byrne. And I'm like, wait a minute. How long did he know about this gig? Because his whole outfit, head to toe, is country. He has this huge sideburns, all this shit.
He went all in, man.
Like, what? And Dave and I are like, what? It was like the Butch Vig story, the search story. We're like Zelig. Oh, the best story is, you know, we're this little band from Detroit with a record deal, and we're going to New Music Seminar, one and only in 1990. I think it was 3. This is right before our record company goes out of town. You know, it's when Dave sees the Verve at 4 a.m. Dave's pounding, cooking, sharing. He's telling him how much Majesty Crush loves him. Dave comes back 4 a.m. He's like, I'm like, Dave, how was it? He's like, Rod Stewart meets God. And I can still hear him saying that. I'm like, that's probably the best. You can call the Verve a lot of things, but Rod Stewart meets God. I'm going to stick with that one. So we get there, Kelly. We're like, man, we're going to my friend Don's place. He lives right across from CB's. So it's like, this is back when that was still something. Amy Sedaris worked on the first floor of the restaurant. And we're going there, and we're driving down St. Mark's Place like this little band from Detroit. And I swear to God, right in front of Trash and fucking Vaudeville, who crosses the street in front of us? Darcy from the Pumpkins. I swear to God, the bass player. We're just like, no fucking way. We're in the right place. And, you know, we proceed to play our gig with some tuning issues. It's okay, but it's pretty apparent, you know, Dave's drinking a lot, whatever. And when the record company went out of business, we soldiered on with the tour. And then we did that Sam's Muscles EP. And let me back this up. I had a need to play more aggressive music. We were playing a lot with Wig, and at that time, West Indian Girl. We were playing with, you know, the Hyenas I had mentioned. And I just had an interest in doing music, and I saw it as being totally illogical. Just, you know, we learned our way around instruments, a little more aggressive. So the Sam's Muscles EP is really, really rock and roll, you know? Right. It's modeled after like Rage Against the Machine, Ted Nugent Stranglehold, big U2-y bass lines. But that whole record was okay.
Yeah, let's start going into that record. Yeah, talking.
Well, that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
But Sans Muscles, it's called Sans Muscles because I quit the band. I just, frankly, I was going through my own issues, but the reality was I think we all took the label going out of business very differently. And even though we were still a band, we were all mourning it and all angry about it. And there was a lot of drinking, a lot of infighting. One thing that happened is Dave picked up the guitar, and that kind of made Michael want to put it down. And it's a lot what happened, like, I hate to say it, it's what happened with Soundgarden. It's what happened with Oasis in many ways. Whenever a singer starts to play guitar, the band becomes very, very different. And the thing was, the songs on that, if JFA were still together, which starts off all aggressive, rang, rang. I mean, that's the fucking badass jam. But it kind of ends with these JFA. It ends with this, like, all together now. Kumbaya, my lord. Everyone's singing now. You, Negro. You, Caucasian. You know what I mean? You. It was totally like, if JFA was still together, we're all aggressive, but really we want everybody to get along. That was the band. And that Sans Muscles, to me, the finest Majesty Crush song of what it became, like as opposed to trying to rewrite Number One Fan or do something at that level, the best song is Sane, S-E-I-N-E. Of course, Double Entendre about insanity. It's about the river in Paris, and it's a true story. What Dave did, Dave's mom and sister were these gorgeous German sisters. And they married these two black GIs that were stationed in Germany. And like when Kraftwerk came out, everybody just assumed they were the black GIs in Germany who just retired there. And that's why this music was so funky in Germany. So this American-German connection was big, especially with, to be blunt, Black America. And so this is in the early 60s. So Dave is raised in this family, multicultural, but his mom, after his cousin died, his mom got this feeling like, wow, I really sacrificed my whole life for the American dream. But like my biracial kid is having trouble and his biracial cousin just got killed. And I think Dave had a lot of survivor's guilt about that. But what Sane is about, it's a stylization of a woman who's beautiful and an actress who is instead concentrates on being a mother, and it leads to some doubting of her self-esteem, both as an actress, but also as a mother. And the song culminates with the mom killing herself, and you don't realize till after you've heard it, when it goes, I loved you, mother, but you never came home. Dave is the baby. Dave is metaphorically the baby who was supposed to be a double suicide. But the way his mom kind of felt martyred to moving to America and being part of the problem by having multiracial kids that were troubled and did nothing but attract trouble. There's stories of Dave's cousins getting chased around Cass Tech with razors because the more dark-skinned women were jealous. And this was like 72, 73. It's like 76, 77.
Right.
It's awful, man. It's awful. I remember in Ann Arbor, we weren't even in a band with Dave. I remember he went to the black, like the student union, black, whatever, and they just were like, what the fuck, man? Because, at the time, when you said like black university, it was, the Greek system and the whole world of that. Dave was clearly, not an easy fit and probably appeared a little eccentric. And we all do it. And I'm not saying this is not racist. It's just, I think Dave always had, he was great. He was wonderful. But the song Sane is about having the best intentions and it going like tragically wrong.
Right.
But that song is the most, to me, it's his vocals. He talks like a rapper, the way the guitar changes, turn on the transistor to get an updated news report. What is it? She could have been the world's greatest actress. He never thought that she was attractive. It's fucking ODB putting the vocal in there. And I'm an asshole, But Jesus Christ, I listen to that song now and I'm like, I'm not even on drugs, but this is really good. And yeah, the music's kind of monochromatically whatever, but his vocal is really good. I'm talking like rapper articulate, the way we break down verses. And, you know, you've all seen the thing where it's like Rakim's verse and shit. I'm like, I put Dave up there with all of them. In that record, this is what sucked, is I was leaving the band and Dave kind of did a big fuck you. We re-recorded Pennies for Love as part of the Love 15 sessions, but nobody liked it. And then Dave wanted to re-record it with the thing Windmill Friends, Amsterdam, Holland, and it was awful. But that was the kind of stuff with Dave. I remember once, the last show we did, playing JFA as we're still together because it was a strong sound to come out with. Plus, our label had gone out of business. We played our first big show, and there were a ton of people there.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of those things, Kelly, where we were the only game in town that night, but people showed up, like 500 people. We actually headlined St. Andrews Hall, and all these fucking people showed up. After our record, like, whatever.
Right.
We were like, oh, my God. Dave didn't want to sing JFA. So we played the whole thing without a vocalist, then did the whole set, then did it as an encore. But we were already having Dave doing his HR from Bad Brains, eccentric, doesn't really want to participate. And it was by then, I think he was feeling the weight of, fuck. I was like, what am I doing with my life? I'm sober. Odell really, I mean, I love Odell. If there's one relationship I'm ecstatic to be able to say proudly, I appreciated his drumming. I was a drummer, and of course I was a different drummer. Odell's drumming is amazing, and that was the thing when we were mastering the record. I remember Doug Olson stopping the tape, going, "Hang on to this drummer." This is the guy who used to mic Jimmy Chamberlain for Billy Corgan and the Pumpkins, and he's like, "Hang on to him." But this is what I would say. There are a few really mediocre songs on Sans Muscles. I did wind up leaving the band. But I would put Sane and JFA as two of the best Majesty Crush songs ever written, in spite of ourselves. And that's a really pretentious thing to say. But I can say as a person now, I'm a bigger fan of that music now as a fan than I ever was as a creator.
The story that
I always thought Majesty Crush, see, I was from a really good family. We all were.
Right.
So I think we all felt a little like fuck-ups. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I was an English major from U of M. Odell is an attorney who put the Public Enemy deal together with Def Jam to re-release the Fight the Power remix that's out right now. Odell Nails is the legal counsel for one of the most important songs in the world right now. Let's just say back then, we didn't always feel like we were living up to our potential. And then when the record company went out of business, there was nothing to be a prodigal son about anymore. If you woke up on a dumpster, you were a trash. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't funny anymore. It wasn't funny. And there was crazy shit. In the band, you remember the band Mule?
Yeah.
Okay, they were on Touch and Go, Quarter Stick. They were the Laughing Hyenas and Wig. But they have a song called Come Out, We Know You're Drunk. It's about Dave. He just went off the rails, man. And then we played together in that band, P.S. I Love You, which was more straight ahead rock. And then it got like the novelty of like, where the fuck is Kevin Shields? And he did a record with Rocket Girl over in England, and they're still totally involved. But the Sans Muscles record is bittersweet because I had left. There were a few songs on there I didn't think were worth putting on there. But it contains two songs that to me showed, even with no reason to be a band anymore, we still were. And those were really two of the most articulated things I think we did. You know, Kelly, it's really weird. Like, your whole life's work, you're not going to see it like this. But in 10 years, somebody will come up and say, like, in one sentence, remember how you said that thing? And I was like, that's the best way anybody ever put it. And I'm going to go back and listen to this because I don't even remember it. But somebody will say something in one sentence about all the work you're doing now, and you'll go, yeah, that's cool.
Oh, I think I've already...
Simple. It's one sentence, man. One sentence. It's like, You bring people joy with the insight and accomplishment of creating culture against circumstances that inspire it, both good and bad.
Oh, I totally understand that thought. I already kind of had those moments, because of the original iteration of Renaissance Soul as a Jay Dilla website and in Detroit hip hop website. You know, that was around before social media and before you could easily make a website and all of that. And it was this place,
like house shoes. And that's the thing, man. If there's someone I would say is a parallel to Dave Stroughter, it would be Michael Buchanan, DJ House Shoes. They're very similar. They both had to let it go in very, very different ways. They were both, and this is where I think Shoes and I have always gotten along. We were witnesses and cultivators of what we feel is greatness that maybe not everybody understood.
Right.
He has since become the biggest creator and fan of music simultaneously, that he continues to inspire. And of course, now in these political days, I mean, first it was just Dilla. And even he would go, okay. Because I used to talk to him, like I talked to him about the Guilty Mad Lib record,
right?
You know, and he filled in every blank. Because, you know, I found out everything from Brian Gillespie, Cracker, Pat, D.L. Jones. This is amazing. This is really, really amazing. I knew it was important.
Yeah, and I was kind of the same way.
But there's nothing worse as a journalist. You know this, Kelly.
Yeah.
When you hear how important something is, and it's just not very good. You know? You're like, okay, this isn't very good. How many times do you hear a movie's supposed to... Now, I felt that way about a lot of hip-hop. And the thing that was really wild about all the Dilla shit, and this is something, again, huge parallel, like the Slum Village world. Brian Gillespie, the great Brian Gillespie, used to say, you know, it's almost like they want to be in their own world.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember interviewing, you know, he'd bring people up and I'd interview them. And all I can say is it's like when Dilla and Proof, it was like, you had to enter it's like ICP. You have to enter that world to really get it or appreciate it. And I think the weird thing about Majesty Crush was, if you enter the world, it keeps going. Space rock.
Yeah.
Fight the power. Like, officer involved shooting and pennies for love. Like, what the fuck? But you can hear Number One Fan and go, oh, that's the song from the TikTok thing. It's like my buddies and I are all rap. I mean, I discovered Fleetwood Mac's Dreams in 1976 or 7 when it came out as a camper at Camp Santa Maria in Gaylord, Michigan. After Reveille, you'd have to clean your bunk and go to mass, and they would play the Rumors record cover to cover. I heard that record 14 times in a row when I was, 10 years old, 11 years old in summer camp. Then I'm DJing and people are asking for it. I'm like, this is 10 years ago, Kelly.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have the record, but you kidding? Like, you know what this, I love it.
Yeah.
I love this record, but you guys are like 20. They wanted to hear it. And of course now TikTok. So there's that whole deal. Somebody's like, I was in a Starbucks in this song. And they're like, oh, it's the song from the TikTok commercial. I'm like, I love that. My nieces and nephews, Norman, Maggie, my sister Annie, her husband Norman Rice, huge Majesty Crush fans. They'll send me pictures where all the kids are sitting there with a lot of mood. She'd be like, this looks like a Majesty Crush record. I get friends all the time. My friend Steve Atkinson, major artist in New York. He and his son work together, building these huge collaborative sculpture furniture pieces. And they listen to Love 15. He told me, he's the one who said, dude, I'm listening to Sam, man. This is a good song. He was a musician when I was in high school. I looked up to him. He was in a cover band that could play Led Zeppelin rock and roll. I was like, how do you even do that? I was like, oh, if you play bass, you can play keyboard. It's like, I don't even know how to hold that thing. Plus, Kelly, I was left-handed, so everything was upside down backwards. I did everything wrong, obviously. But that's what I'm saying, my man. It's like, you know, to know Detroit's kindred spirits is to know there are, like, I've interviewed Eminem. I went and hung out at Todd's house, Uncle Todd. I saw all the yearbooks. I have a deep respect for Paul Rosenberg. he reached out to me very early when we were starting to do stuff at D12 and M. He just moved to New York. I was there. And he actually invited me to like move in with him in Jersey City. And clearly my life would have been different. And, you know, I wrote basically a piece on M that said a lot of the 8 Mile myth wasn't true, but what was true was actually even more deeply sad. And it was talking to his Uncle Todd. You know, it's just the simple stuff we all know. The trailer was really at Gratiot and whatever mile.
Yeah.
He was a little older than people, I think from 8 Mile. Still a genius, still everything, but did do a first record that sounded a little too much like Nas, didn't really go very far. Slim Shady was really in other words, you know, the story Cracker told, Christmas of '99, was, and it was for this very story. He and Bob went over there. That was the year they would do the Made in Detroit Christmas party. It was at the Rooster Tail, Kid Rock and Made in Detroit. And Bob was playing, and I was back from New York, and this blonde is stumbling around asking everybody for blow. And I'm talking to Bob, and this lady who stumbles by, it's Kim.
Oh.
Marshall's there trying to corral Kim. I didn't know this. I was like, whatever. Paul Rosenberg, whatever. I come to find out, you know, that then I talked to Cracker, and he's like, yeah, Bob and I were over there, man, for Christmas. You know, this is M is huge, or getting huge by now. It was the first year M was huge after Slim Shady. And the whole deal was that, like, I was on that tour. I wrote about it for Ray Gun magazine. It was technically the first cover story, but it took Ray Gun forever to put it out. But I remember I met them out in San Francisco, and like they were doing in-stores, and My Name was a pop song. It was like the equivalent of what today would be a K-pop song. Nobody knew about Infinite. Nobody gave a shit about Battles. He was the Bart Simpson rapper.
Yeah.
It was a joke. You and I knew it was genius. You and I knew the first single from the record was really I Don't Give a Fuck.
Right. Right.
But the world knew that. And I'll never forget, after that year, you know, I'm kind of writing this expose because that's what dicky local journalists do. I'll tell you the real deal. He had a free trailer, and it wasn't in 8 Mile. It was in Gratiot. You know, who cares?
Right.
But Cracker, Matt Schaefer, who's the most wonderful man, and he and I were friends. I remember saying, man, I can't get Bob. You guys are so big, I can't get Bob on the phone. He's like, I can't either. So we'd share, and he said, you know, Bob and I went over there for Christmas, and he had his new house in Sterling Heights, and he had a studio he's building in the basement, and nobody's there. And it's Bob and Cracker, like, the house is empty. And I remember Cracker said he opened the fridge, and it was like the 3 things of ketchup and like a leftover that was well past his prime. And I'll never forget what Cracker said about Eminem. He looked like a guy who'd just been took. You know, like Rod, taken for everything, duped. And he didn't say it to be mean. He said it to be empathetic.
Yeah, yeah.
And my point is, there is not a Detroit success story that doesn't have a serious fucking chip on its shoulder and an even darker past. I don't care if it's, you know, Kid Rock with everybody who doubted him and the shit he took for being a super rich kid. You know? Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is Dave Stroughter, his dad loaned us money for those first EPs. You know, the van we got, I got a deal on because my dad was the head lobbyist. He was now retired. He was the head lobbyist for Ford Motor Company. You know, he'd be like, yeah, I saw Bill's son on the Letterman the other night. He's a real goofball, huh? And I'm like, Dad, he's Kid Rock. He's famous. Whatever. You know, I remember my dad was like, when I got a record deal, he goes, yeah, well, you know, the success rate, it's like 99% you're going to fail. And I'm like, Dad, I'm driving a brand new van. You help me get things. It's paid for, and I'm insured. And I got enough money to pay my rent and my roommate's rent for a year. I'm going to call this one I'm going to call this a positive in my life today. You know,
it's fine for now.
Of course, the bottom fell out and the band broke up. But I think that's one of the reasons that the legacy, it's important to take it a step at a time because I don't know if you know this, the Deus label, which is the wonderful dark wave label out here that does adult, and they have Psychic TV, and they have Drab Majesty, and what's that fucking band I love from Salt Lake? Oh, Choir Boy. Choir Boy. Do you know Choir Boy?
No, I haven't heard Choir Boy yet. I'll check it out.
Get out of my sight. No son of mine. Go play with your sister's dolls. It is, and I'm going to say this right now. You know how when you first heard M83 and you thought it was an old, like, new wave band?
Right.
Because it was so 80s? Like, I'm that guy, and I remember, what the fuck? You know?
Right.
This label, I'm on a label with adults and all these bands because Spawn Ranch, the band that Odell and I were in, has a compilation called Back to the Wood. And I joined Spawn Ranch very late in their career, and I'm on, I think, 1 or 2 songs on the record. So that scene then begets, that's post-punk. But then when we come out, we're kind of trying to do this Cocteau Twins, but we know hip-hop and just we know music, like P-Funk, whatever.
Yeah.
So we had rhythm. We had a better rhythm section. Name a shoegaze band that has a good rhythm section besides the band Ride. Ride is sick as fuck. That motherfucker, listen to Leave Them All Behind, the 8.5-minute version. Jesus Christ. I want to give that guy Ben Gay and a fucking Vicodin when it's done. Jesus. At least that's what I do. Wow. Just insanely good. But that was kind of Odell and I's thing was like, I don't want to say we were blacker. That's terrible. But
yeah,
we were always coming from a slightly more complicated history, shall we say. That's why we woke up on dumpsters with a wetsuit on that said Majesty Crush Detroit.
Yeah.
That's why Dave was in jail. That's why we wrote songs about porn theaters that sounded like angels. That was kind of the whole thing. It was like, if you're in the middle of dirt, how about a flower? Even if it's a fucking dandelion. That was the tritest thing I've ever said. You should hashtag this whole thing. I'm gonna have a character called Trite Boy Rick. He's just gonna do.
But you know what? The thing is,
oh, there's lots of things. Clearly, we've been doing this for 2 hours. Yeah.
But the thing is, what you laid out about the meaning behind the words or the song "Sane," and coupled with what you were talking about with sort of like the deterioration of the band, that's really both those things were really relatable in regards to Detroit, where Detroit's this working class. It came from the Industrial Revolution, and we're always sort of trying to balancing our creativity with our work life, and
utterly.
And
that's why I was so fortunate. The Numeral label, right? That gorgeous reissue label out of Chicago. They did Downriver Revival, and Mike Siegel, Dave's brother. I wrote about it for Metro Times. And you know the story. It was an auto worker named Fenton who lived in Dearborn, who adapted a Hawaiian slide guitar instrument. And his thing was he did gospel music, but he would have a successful crossover hit. And this guy with his Ford Motor Company thing sat in his basement with his homemade Hawaiian guitar and proceeded to say, I will build a secular gospel empire. And it did have one hit. There was a huge Northern Soul thing. That's actually why the comp happened.
Yeah.
Much like how the successive number one fan in the presence of Majesty Crush is able to serve as we're the boys of the chorus. We hope you like our show. We know you're rooting for us, but now we got to go. And now on to the main act. That kind of Majesty Crush is a pretty damn good introduction to what this music is based on that, because it is a little more, not to sound racist, but a little shuck and jive. It's poppier. It's more straightforward. Mm-hmm. The singer is more full voiced. It's more melodic, but it has lyrics like "I'll kill the president for your love," and "I bought everything that you played on." The hick thing is just terrifying. But the thing is, that was Dave, and that's kind of the point. Is that it's just something that's got a. We're in a world that gives us the time to really appreciate shit today. And a huge thing for me was appreciating stuff that I either thought I was incapable of, or just what is this like to experience new with no preconceptions. And I used to be scared to tell people Majesty Crush. I used to be embarrassed to acknowledge it or play it. But I've actually had people come up to me out here in LA. Like, aren't you, or don't you, or I'll wear this Majesty Crush shirt. It's insane.
Dude,
now,
that name seems familiar.
Do you want to hear the story how we got the masters back for this?
Oh, yeah. That's
okay. So this is a good story to kind of end on, for no other reason. This is really a good story.
Yes.
I don't have to say this. Okay. I want to impart to you that everything I'm about to mention happens in a 72-hour period. Independent parts. It has to do with London, England, Detroit, Michigan, Nashville, I believe Duluth, Minnesota, Los Angeles, California, and San Francisco. This all happens at once, 72 hours. Okay. My buddy Dennis wins the Grammy. Charm Dennis. Now, he's covered Majesty Crush before. He records on the name of Detroit, and he wins a Grammy for remixing Depeche Mode. Damn, right? So he was talking to me like, I do a lot of music supervision. I'm cool with like the KCRW DJs. That's the big public radio station out here where every DJ, because there's so much Hollywood out here. It's like, hey, I hear you every day on the radio. Can you help me do music for my movie?
Yeah.
So Dennis was like, dude, if you can get Majesty Crush re-released, just that kind of like wistful pop with a little darkness, man. It's kind of, 90s are coming back, 90s. I could see this in film, TV shows. I'm like, yeah, but we put our music out. And of course he checks it. He's like, well, there's that thing on Spotify that doesn't have many streams, blah, 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 blah. You need a re-release. You need a way to capitalize on it as a new product. And fully dismayed, I put down the phone or whatever. And that was a rare weekend I wasn't working as a DJ. And I remember the Sunday afternoon, because I wasn't working, I bothered to check Facebook messages. And there's two. One is, hi, are you in Majesty Crush? And I open it, and it's an author from New Hampshire who is writing a book about a zombie apocalypse where there's a guy who's obsessed with a tennis star. He discovered the song Celis by Majesty Crush, which is Dave talking about Monica Seles, and he proceeds to include it in his book. And as a degree of fandom, he has these shirts produced that are the French Open, but it's Love 15, the name of the record. It's in 92, and that's the year. I mean, this is like, I feel like I'm detailing a Supreme product for StockX here, but this is this guy had these shirts. And he tells me all about it. I'm like, well, I'm glad you're a fan of the band, man. We haven't had music out in a while. It's funny, my buddy who just won a Grammy is talking about it, but yeah, if anything happens, thanks for your interest. There's the message below it. Hi, my name is, and I think I have something of yours. And I'm like, fucking, this has got to be a scam phishing thing. So I look up the name, and it's like a housewife in Duluth, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Okay, I open it. There's a picture. It's the master tapes from Smart Studio that the Pumpkins guy did. That Butch Vig, with the fucking Smashing Pumpkins story. The master tapes, she has a picture of in their like film cases. I think these are yours. I see the notations, drum part. They're the mastered tapes.
Okay.
24 track from wherever the fuck though, right? Half-inch, it's called half-inch tape. Very hard to master, hard to find those machines. Early 90 to now, totally different world. Holy shit. It turns out Dave was roommates with this gentleman who killed himself in LA. And in the closet of his apartment was a 10-year-old box that Dave had left there when Dave started to realize some stuff wasn't going right. He was going to be traveling, starting to get arrested, the mental stuff. So be smart enough to take his most prized possession, or one of them, which was the Love 15 Masters, keep it in his kid's closet. Well, he kills himself. Everything gets shipped. Because after Dave's death, all this shit, it all gets shipped off to the next of kin in Duluth, Minnesota. And I'm like, wow, that's a crazy story. Then I go to Instagram, and there's a big old message from Stephanie Stroughter, Dave's sister. And she's like, I didn't send it yet, but, I never told you guys this. I got this. It's right around the anniversary of Dave's death, right? I don't know how to tell you guys this, but he did leave a note that said, make sure my music gets heard. So, and he knew Jack White. Like at the early Gold Dollar, Dave would do solo shows, and they knew of each other. Everybody did. I mean, it wasn't like everybody knows, but Everything was cool. So she's like, I want to just like send a message to Third Man Records and say, well, you guys put this out, but I don't know, maybe I'm drunk. I just feel like it's something they would do. And this is right around when they put out the Laughing Hyenas reissues and everything.
Right.
And I was like, well, as a matter of fact, we may have the tapes. On Monday, 72 hours later, in the inbox is, oh, hi, I'm Rich Hansen. I talked to Dave Buick. I used to book you guys a lot. We'd like to talk about re-releasing Number One Fan on this compilation we're thinking about doing. Do you have any idea, where the recording is or the master tapes?
Wow.
And I'm like, do I? No, it gets better. So I call all over the place. Mike Clark is going to help us because the shit's on a 2-inch machine. Right after we ink the deal, like all the shit comes together, it's, well, what do we do? They're 2-inch master tapes. How the hell? Where do we get vintage equipment? Of course, there's mastering places in LA, but it's a ton of money. It's like $500 an hour. Motherfucker. Third Man buys a 2-inch mastering machine, and they hire Warren DeFever from His Name Is Alive, early on Bud and Nemesis, to remaster it. So our earliest gigs, anything that's on YouTube, Majesty Crush, those are all playing with His Name Is Alive. And we didn't know what hit us because we just knew they were on 4AD and they had a song on the Jerry Maguire soundtrack, and we would have killed for that. But it's exactly because he wasn't looking for it that he got it. Listen, kids. But what was so beautiful, was that Warren did the remastering. And what he did was he took Number One Fan and he really made it punchy. And I never knew what it meant. But if you're a fan of Primal Scream, and that's a band now I love. If they were a good band, they're even greater now because I love the energy and the stories. Just like you love music and stories, obviously, I might have a few of them. I'm a bit of a talker. But where this gets beautiful is Primal Scream's second record. They were all on drugs and afraid they were just remixed into being a band. So they decide they're going to be super authentic, and like idiots, they go to Memphis, they hire all those old musicians, and they come in here with half-baked songs, and they record them, and the record's very lukewarm, and they wind up having to outsource it to Detroit. Mike Clark and George Clinton do half the songs, and this is what a kick to the shitter this is. Mikey, it's going to get out. Now, some of the Primal Scream songs that George and Mike remixed, they didn't like the original sound, so they went to the first record, Screamadelica, and they sampled sounds off there to make into the songs on the second record, which is sort of a diss. Hey, build me a car. I have these new parts. Ching. How about the old one? Anyway, but then the BBC they got the old master tapes from Nashville, the way they were done, or from Memphis, the way they were done. And there's a version of the record done in its original kind of Memphis soul, with the pianos. And it sounds like a really good, like, boogie rock record. But it's not like a rock record. Like they had George Drakoulias and the Black Crowes remastered. But this is the original Soft Touch. Well, what I realized what Warren did was he took the Soft Touch Majesty Crush and he put it through the filter of how good music can sound now. It's punchier. I always joke it feels faster. It just has more energy.
Yeah.
I think Majesty Crush was a band. We loved records that were swirly and soft, but there were times playing Sunny Pie live or Feign Sleep live. Could have put you to sleep. And not in a bad way, but it's hard to do that shit. If you've ever seen Sonic Youth, like when they were doing like State Theater, it was a band that you really wanted to see at a small ass club. Like in a St. Andrews, but they're 30 feet apart from each other.
I saw Sonic Youth at Pine Knob opening for the Iggy Pop and the Stooges. So
yeah, obviously there's something wrong with that.
I totally understand that. I'm sitting there the whole time
like, terrible because all the overtones get lost. I actually reviewed, I don't know if you remember, the whole record, the one they re-released Daydream Nation, but they had all these live versions. They're all sped up so fast you can't hear the song. And you don't realize how much of Sonic Youth are these beautiful guitar overtones that live you don't always get.
Right.
Like U2, if you've ever seen documentary. It might get loud. My favorite scene, besides where they all play Seven Nation Army, is when Jack White makes a thing with a nail and a string, or a wire, is when the Edge is standing on the water and he has this 5,000 pedals, and he goes 2 notes, dink, dink, dunk, dunk. Then he steps on all the pedals and they light up like a fucking ocean liner, and it starts sounding like a cathedral organ going back and forth. You two spend weeks practicing that in empty arenas to get there. The Edge has gone on record as saying it takes us 3 or 4 weeks to even get good. That's what I'm saying, is now what I know about music, like Coldplay makes, it's Sarah McLachlan for men. You know what I mean? It's really contrived, but it's perfect.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is, like, we had no sense of that way back when. And that was something, you know, every live Majesty Crush song I hear sounds really angry and aggressive. If you see the one that was at Majestic Theater, that was really early. It was like 1990, 1991. There were songs like Shut Up. It was like this grindy, dark, Cramps, Joy Division, Swans type shit. Because, again, that was Dave, man. It wasn't all pennies for love. It's like, you know, Marvin Gaye tried out for the Lions. Marvin Gaye took a bag of weed and a bag of money and went to Hawaii. He got killed by his dad. But he could, I want you, and I want you. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like James Brown. I mean, really great artist, Prince. You know, they're not aggressive people. They just have a huge presence. You know what I mean? Even if it's controversial. I hope that answered what was sort of your question.
No, it's
I'm kind of losing. My blood sugar is getting a little low. Right. Remember, I'm old as dirt. I'm 54 and I've had 2 hip replacements.
So, you know, kind of, you know, closing down, you know, this interview, when you kind of touched on it already a little bit, but when you looking back right now, it's 2020, and you're looking back on that music, that time, you know, how do you feel like it connects with you today, and how do you feel like it connects with just society today?
With me today, it connects. I've spent my whole life trying to help people find their voice and to have that voice heard. That's what I did as a writer. That's what I did as a musician. I wanted to take something that was privately inspiring and meaningful to me, and if it meant something to somebody else, cool. And if it didn't, I'll keep it in the bedroom, kind of a thing. I think if you hear Majesty Crush now, you can appreciate it because there's so much music that's beautiful and adventurous and contradictory. I look at artists like The Weeknd or M83 and their kind of gothy breathlessness. And I'm not going to say like, oh, I hear Crush, but Crush was an anomaly. We came out at the height of grunge, man. You know, it was like the only thing we had going for us was that's when all those bands, like, you know, we opened for every UK band that just didn't want a local rock band. So we would open for the Cranes, which were like The Cure's favorite band. They were like a gothier Susie and the Banshees. And we opened for, we opened for Jesus Jones. We opened for Chapter House and Industry. In fact, Chris Panacki, the great sound man, we were playing through Chapter House's system. I don't know if you remember, they had that Schoolie D beat in their song. The Parkside Killers beat, I think, was part of their song. So they had to have a special part of the PA for handling like recorded beats and shit. It's before that was all really good. So Panacki had us sounding amazing. We had a board recording of it. It was actually, no, it was Carlos Oxholm from Motor. It wasn't Chris Panacki, it was Carlos. God bless him. The guy he sold me Motor Sideroom, the same PA that Nashville Pussy played through the night of Underground Resistance. Were being interviewed by Mike Rubin from Spin Magazine. Mad Mike at a booth with Dan Sordell, Carl Craig, and Mike Rubin. And in the next room, Nashville Pussy's playing with the big. Imagine Mad Mike and Nashville Pussy. I'm sure they had it. It was like Mad Mike Banks and Jar Jar Binks. You know what I mean? Not happening. Right. You know what I'm saying, man? But I have that soundboard, but the point is, we would open for all these bands, and we would play through their sound system. So people just assumed we were a really great sounding national band.
Right.
A lot of people didn't know we were local, and it was so fucking cool because without even trying, Amir Deza, God bless him, Amir, who did Industry, did all the great clubs in Detroit, Shelter, St. Andrews Hall. He and Vince Bannon like pioneered Lollapalooza, for Christ's sake. Amir was like, these guys should be playing raves, you know. And what Amir saw, Majesty Crush would play with much harsher bands, Laughing Hyenas, Mule, Royal Trucks, and then we'd play with Chapter House or Curve, My Bloody Valentine, shit like that. And what was funny about it was Amir thought, if you guys can be the like kind of the oasis, literally and figuratively, in these harsher scenes, why can't you play raves? Like the Stone Roses. He thought we were going to be Detroit's version of the Stone Roses. And to have that kind of support from a local promoter, Amir Deza, like people really had, Amir was smart. Amir was like, you're a local band. Nobody knows who you are. I'm giving you an opportunity. The national band has a huge guarantee. I need to sell tickets and booze. This is what I'll do for you guys. And we kind of said, we're not here to get paid, but we got every great opening gig. And we sold shirts. Right. I would go around with a backpack, sell shirts, CDs, everything. Because I didn't drink. I was like the hustler. I'd walk out of there with $400. And then, yeah, sure, Amir paid us $50. Who cares? I just made $400 and got 20 new fans. And like when I would start to talk to ICP and they would talk about promotions, one of the most important things they do, I started to get it. And, you know, that's the thing. The relevance of the music today, for me personally, is I've never been prouder of it, but I've never been able to enjoy it more. And the more I know the story of Dave and the scene it came out of, I realized it really was kind of a miracle, but it was also completely logical and organic. Like reggae music or the Smiths having a huge Mexican fan base out here. It should have been a mistake. It shouldn't be able to happen. An eccentric black guy who could speak German and dressed like a fucking soccer goalie who would get arrested and write shiny pop songs. Today we would call him the Weeknd and a genius. Back then we called him crazy.
Yeah, and I saw this
Today I think if Majesty Crush came out today, I am totally confident Dave could sit down in a studio with anybody, and make music. And Kid Rock to Autechre.
Right.
Anybody big, and any hip hop producer. If Dave got with a real Dave and Mike Clark, for one of the greatest hip hop producers of our time, Mikey Clark, the heart and soul of Insane Clown Posse's music, songs for Kid Rock, produced Primal Scream, produced everybody. Wow.
Yeah, and
they came up with P.S. I Love You like in their back pocket. So the relevance of the music today, fearlessness, enjoyability, embrace your contradictions, and find joy in it. Find joy in your pain, not just in outliving it. You know, I always tell people, man, I want music that inspires me, that doesn't just demand that I listen to it. I want to be inspired, don't make demands of me inspire me, right? And I think there's something about Majesty Crush. We took so much shit on the local level, but it was from the haters who couldn't figure out why we got bigger. And the thing was, basically, we had prettier music that when you really listened to it had a little more sticking power because it was really dark themes.
Yeah, and what you're saying it reminds me of this quote that I saw that Joshua Glazer said about your album, is that it's a testament to what might have been if only the band members lived in Manchester instead of Detroit. And that's what happened with that Manchester scene. The Joy Division, New Order, and all that, planted the seeds for the rave culture there. And
hell yeah.
And you guys were able to fit in the same thing.
You know from that Joy Division video, for people who don't know, I'm a journalist. And I had the opportunity to go to Manchester, England, and interview New Order, who used to be Joy Division. They were getting ready for the And what made that record interesting, it was called Get Ready. They hadn't made a record in a long time. This was right before 9/11. And the press were getting flown over to Manchester, England. Well, I had a lot going on. I think I was actually at the Red Bull Music Academy that year. Maybe. Yeah, I was. Yeah. It was 2000, right before the shit. So here's why this story is relevant, is that I get flown over there, and it turns out the press guy is actually a Detroiter. So he's cool with me, and we're kicking. I'm like, I'm totally, I apologize. I was at a family reunion. I know I'm the last interview. He goes, well, actually, they aren't doing the interviews per se. You kind of are familiar with the music. We're actually going out to the rehearsal space. They're behind on time. Well, it turns out we're going along, and it's like straight out of Central Casting. It's an old man with big welly boots with a dog Irish setter running by, and we're on these beautiful hills, and it's outside of Manchester. And we pull into like a farmhouse with like the stone walls and shit. And I come around, and I'm going to the back garage, and all I hear is, I can't, let me do it with two hands, but you know what I'm talking about. They're fucking rehearsing Blue Monday.
Yeah.
The band. And they're working in two new guys because Jillian, the keyboard player, is taking care of she and Steven, the drummer's kid, who I guess has special needs or whatever. My daughter was epileptic. I can understand. I get in there. I'm so strung out. I just go for the bass. I pick up the bass. I start playing Level Terrace Apart. He corrects me. It's a YouTube video with 800,000 views now. But I sit down and talk to him. It was the same deal. They were total punk rock. You know why? They dared the world to like them after Joy Division, because they figured it was a little bit like Spawn Ranch into Majesty Crush. Joy Division was the kind of darker, scarier, crazier territory. New Order was the kind of more pop-based, interested in embracing current trends. And like you said, it was a band that inspired Manchester, and then Manchester inspired them right back. It was very similar to us. We were inspired by Jane's Addiction, but I think we kind of stepped up and became our own entity, writing our versions of what we thought, like Motown. And Dave is a vocalist. You know, Perry Farrell is as much a genius frontman thinker. Did you get that? Are you still there? Yeah. Perry Farrell is as much a genius, a thinker, and an artist as he is a musician and a singer. People would argue he's better. But what he does is something very well. You know, Mel Torme was once asked, who is the worst technical singer that you think was the best singer? It's like Elvis Presley. His voice wasn't the greatest, but Jesus Christ, you know? Have you ever heard the track-by-track breakdown of Under Pressure? Freddie Mercury's all over the place. You know who's pitch perfect the entire time? David Bowie. He was a total classical musician. That's what I'm saying. Real genius is almost in spite of itself. That's what I want Majesty Crush to do. I want every kid out there who doesn't feel like they belong, especially culturally, to go, here's a dude who got arrested, took shit, cousin got killed, and he got killed. And there was still beauty in this world. And I'm sorry, you're not, Kelly, I love you, man. You're never going to meet another band that has a story like this. I'm sorry, you're just not. If you can find one, that's okay. And I'm not saying this, I don't wish on my worst enemy that your creative partner in life is someone that had to endure that much pain and was ultimately killed by it. But to know that I was part of something that is a happy ending, happier kind of ending to that story, that's the reason God put me here. It's truly, my whole thing is to be of service to others. Just don't tell my kids. But the point is that, you know, I view it as it's a service to share this music because it was Dave's last wish through his sister Stephanie, who I'm still very, very close with and for whom this is still an incredibly difficult subject. But everybody's happy to see something that has a very 2020 backstory to it, as far as Dave's demise, having something positive to it. You know what I mean? Definitely. I mean, the fact that, you know, you're talking about a guy who was killed in an officer-involved shooting, and we're going to know him for the song Number One Fan more than we're going to know him for getting killed, you know? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I was part of that world, and I'm still figuring it out with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, that's the thing. I think we all just can't believe we were part of something so great. And the first thing that all brought us together was Dave's death, and then the second thing was finding the masters and the music coming out. So there's a little resolution. We always hear of mental health, aggressive policing. You know, how many stories do we have being told no, or that it's not going to work? And it works. It works. It may not be the greatest machine, but it'll work. You know, I don't want to say that's the Black experience or urban experience, but you're just used to, it's just a matter of time when something's going to break down. You got to deal with it. You know? And I think we did that. I think things broke down and we dealt with it. You know? And that's the proudest thing I am of it. And it's the proudest thing I am of Detroit. They used to say Detroit's the Paris of the Midwest. As Detroit goes, so does the rest of the country. I think culturally, Detroit was so far ahead of the game as far as having a Black middle class, having this European Midwestern cross-pollination with the jazz music and musicians. We see it now with techno. Half of them fucking live in Berlin. We were so lost and on our own, but now I feel like we were on the right track. And I want that to be a lesson to people, and I want the music to be good. I want it to be something my nieces and nephews are like, you know, that's good shit. I never thought it was good shit. I thought it was my shit. I didn't think my shit could be good. And now I realize, because I was in it with somebody like Dave, he's a fucking genius. You know, burn twice as bright, half as long. But that's the way it ended, you know? And that's what's beautiful about it. That's why I appreciate this, because I think I'm more of a podcaster than I am a musician these days. But I think that's what the world needs, storytellers, and it needs heroes. And this one has kind of both, you know? But I don't know. Do you think we got everything?
Yeah, I think this is a good place to end at. Do you have any final thoughts, or where, you know, people can follow you online or just get more information?
I'm at Hobey Echlin, Hobey, like obey with an H. Echlin, Echlin. That's the street the Guinness Brewery's on, in Dublin. But you know, the whole thing is, I'm just a huge fan of culture and processing the world around us. And at one point I was able to do it as a musician, and now I'm able to do it as someone who just loves culture, loves being in it, and realizes the true connections we make are in memories and experiences. And Kelly, I just have to thank you, because that's what you do. That's what this podcast does. It reminds us all we can be a nerd. I'm literally going to text somebody right now and ask, how come in Get Off My Cloud by the Stones, there's only one line where he doesn't go, and I know this guy's going to know the answer. And that's my world today, right? And that's like a metaphor for everything. You want to know how the weirdest shit makes sense. Majesty Crush was some weird shit, and it made sense. So that's it, brother. I can't thank you enough. This is beautiful.
Thank you for listening to the Renaissance Soul podcast, hosted and produced by myself, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier, empowered by Anchor at anchor.fm/Renaissance Soul. Renaissance Soul theme music provided by Steve O. You can find more of his productions at iamsteveo.bandcamp.com, and that's EYEAMSTEVEO.bandcamp.com. Renaissance Soul is available on all streaming platforms. Please rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. If you want to support Renaissance Soul, please consider pledging via Patreon at patreon.com/freshastheword. Follow Renaissance Soul on social media, on Instagram at RenSoul Podcast and on Twitter at RenSoulPod. And join the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/freshastheword. And for more information on Renaissance Soul, visit freshasthepodcast.com. Thank you for listening and your support. Goodbye and good night.
Renaissance Soul.